I don't know. I guess we could hang out a little. Uh, yeah. I think Matthew has something meaningful to contribute.
Um,
Just teasing. Yeah. So I'm looking at the DV agenda draft, whatever that doc is. Janine and Garrett, it's your show. Participant consideration, perspectives. I'm just thinking.
I wonder how.
We kind of went over some of it.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's anything interesting. That's all. We did go over some.
I guess, yeah, sorry, this is a specific question that I had before. Probably should have asked it before, but if anyone has ideas for like language for oh wait, 1 second, sorry.
Someone's at his door.
Pizza delivery.
I know.
I think it's housekeeping. They came to me first, and now they're at his door.
Oh God, that's funny. Oh.
That's why I went over by the elevator earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, I had some food.
Oh.
It was food. It was pizza.
It was food. I was joking.
No, because I was like, well, if we're gonna be in here for another couple hours, I should probably
That's hilarious.
1 sec.
And now you're gonna eat in front of us. Gee whiz.
All of this is being recorded for the rest of the ISMAR audience.
That's right. Yeah. And Matthew, you can put your credit card up. What's your credit card number? Well, Matthew was going to say something meaningful before that. I don't know. I don't know how much, we don't have to obviously go the whole time, but I feel like there's maybe something.
I'm probably not going to make it too much longer given the time.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah.
But I do think like people went into a lot of stuff about participants as we were talking about larger researcher issues, because you do want to think about the language that's used, not just to recruit people or understand barriers, but then once you get them into the study, there's like a lot of research to suggest that you should check in with people more. If they're non-native speakers, right, you should make sure that they fully understand everything they're doing, and figuring out how to explain it to people from different backgrounds can be harder, so that everyone has a clear understanding. Like all the stuff we were talking about relates kind of throughout, I feel like, the whole experience for participants.
Yeah. I mean, I just keep thinking to myself about how much work this is.
It's a lot. Like, this is why, like, when you write NIH grants, it's so time consuming to do the targeted enrollment, and then to figure out, like, how am I gonna target these groups? And if there's not an infrastructure already set up where you are, then you have to figure that out. It's difficult. It's really difficult. And of course, like, it doesn't always work.
Yeah. Matthew, you were going to say something before your pizza arrived.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to think about specific language or ways to recruit from different groups. So like I'll give like a very specific example of, like, I was running a study on interruptions of VR users, and thinking about it socially. And I was like, this would be cool if we could get people that aren't just computer science researchers. So I found a bunch of people at UCF, there's a texts and technologies program which is really cool to me. And I went through a bunch of professors. And I was like, all right, they have classes that might be interested in this. And I emailed them, and I tried to word it as like studying this, like maybe interesting social problem, studying communication. You know, can you send this to your students? And a lot of them were like, yes, this sounds awesome. But I didn't get a single one of their students to come. And it was a little disheartening. I was like, I'm like, I don't know what else to do. So I'm like, maybe it's a matter of like building more of a relationship, because when that email comes in, it is like just some computer scientist they've never met.
Yeah, I think this is a general problem now with email. Nobody responds to it.
Sure.
Especially not students. And we've learned actually in like advising students that they don't check their emails. They actually want advising to come through a text in their phone. They're not going to respond to an email. Right? So like the whole generational thing is different. Again, barriers to entry, right? We've been trying to email parents of kids, because you know, if you have kids in a study, the parents have to sign the consent form, and then the kids have to assent. So there's two different forms, but you have to have the parents on board. And like, it turns out all these people with friends that have kids the right age are like, I don't know their parents' email. It's like nobody uses email anymore. So then we're like, how do we get this document to people that they have to sign, or they have to even electronically sign? Are they going to do that on their phones? Can we text it to them? Like it's all very different now. It's very complicated. And if they have to do like one thing, like push a link in an email, they're not doing it. It's crazy. So I'm sorry, Matt, but I'm not surprised. And like the only way we got people to do stuff for us recently was to actually go to the classroom.
Okay.
And stand outside and say, if you want to participate, we're paying $10. Do you want to give us your email right now and your phone number so we can text you? So getting both types of contact information was key.
Didn't we have a discussion, Garrett, somewhere? Was it with Vera, where we were thinking about like an undergrad being like a liaison and using social media to reach out to other students? Where were we talking about that?
I'm not sure.
I think it came up earlier when we were talking about just getting people to wear a headset too. One of the challenges we'll always, or I guess extra considerations we'll always have as XR researchers, is that when we put someone in a headset, that's a very vulnerable position. And I think we forget that when we are trying to recruit, because it's something, you know, you're cutting off part of their senses, if not like most of them, a lot of the time, the ones that they're overly reliant on, at least for the people who are, you know, fully able to see and hear and, you know, things like that. I don't think we think about that enough, about how much they need to implicitly trust us and having that headset on and being in charge of them for that time period. And maybe that's also part of the reason why when you go to the class and they see the person, they're like, that will be, you know, helping them with the study. Not only is it like removing the email problem, but then there's the connection of, okay, this is the person that's going to be essentially looking after my well-being while I have this headset on.
Right.
I've never thought about that. Wow.
Yeah.
It's really apparent too with older folks. If you run them in VR, they get really scared about being in this thing because they're often unsteady. So they're often balance challenged more so than younger adults. And if you say, I'm going to just like put this thing over your eyes, and they don't realize that they're going to be able to see stuff in there yet, they're like, I don't know that I want to do that. I don't know that I want to take away this sense that I'm so dependent on for balance, right?
What does this mean? Does this mean, does it come back to the, I'm just playing around. Imagine there was that organization, the people who was permanent and had this relationship with different, I don't know, people, populations, groups. Then if I'm one of those people, and by I mean the participants in the community who then gets approached by Sue or Bob, who I know somehow, or at least they're affiliated with an organization I know. They have some badge, they have a website, they're not just Joe Schmo off the street. If a researcher is coming with them to me, maybe I trust them more because that person I know, or this person with a role of, you know, looking out for me is part of it. But again, it's not just the inefficiency, but when I get approached, it's kind of what you're saying, Steve. If I get approached by this person, that person, this person, I don't know any of them, and they're all
Yeah,
asking me
it's
to
just
do
the
things.
random person, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if there might be some opportunities that we are not just inviting one person, but always two people, like friends or whatever, and take away a little bit of the fear of attending something they have no idea what that might be. Right? And then it might also increase the diversity, right? If let's say some techie person wants to participate and this person brings a girlfriend or whatever, and then at least we would get someone from outside the community who then might tell some other people about that. And then might bring more people in. I don't know.
I like that. How do you, how would one encourage that? I'm just thinking out loud. It's not a criticism. It's like, would you,
Well,
could you
we
offer
often do.
incentive or?
Yeah, we often, if we're paying people, right, we just say, do you have a, like, if you have a friend and you want to come together, come at the same time. And we'll run you into, we often have like 2 experiments set up then, right? And we'll just run one and one, run one and the other, and then switch them. So they're not sitting around doing nothing. Or we tell them, bring your phone, bring something to do if you're just going to be hanging out for the 20 minutes the other person's in the experiment.
Maybe we can pay them more, right? And bring
But
a
it works
friend or
out well. Well,
family
we do,
member.
yeah, if they're there longer, we pay them more, but it works out well because they're often willing to do it. And if they're coming with someone, I think Garrett's right, they feel a little more comfortable.
Mhm.
I never thought of that. I mean, I was thinking, could you pay them more? I don't know. Our IRB probably wouldn't allow it, but like sort of as a bounty, like if you bring 2 people, if you bring a person with your 2 people, you get a little extra, like a bonus or something.
I'm sorry to laugh, but this is like reminding me of the whole Jeff Epstein trial where they're like paying girls to bring friends, right? You know, like that was terrible. But yeah, I think you can do that. I think you can do like a finder's fee.
In general, I'm a little bit wondering about the reasons why our IRB, for instance, always aims for equal pay, right? I mean, I get the idea that equal pay for equal participation in a way, right? That if someone spends an hour in our labs, then everyone who spends an hour in our lab should get the same amount of money. And,
Yeah.
But it's equality is not the same as equity, right? So shouldn't our IRB push for equity in a way, right? To allow us to pay some people more who need it more than others, or come up with incentives for certain populations, etc.
I don't know if this
Yeah.
is true at all IRBs, but I felt like Garrett with
Yes.
IRB in the past that, you know, my understanding is they're supposed to be protecting the subjects. I have felt at times like our IRB is questioning the scientific side of things. Like you shouldn't be paying people different amounts of money because it's going to affect the outcomes of your research. I'm like, let me worry about that. You know, that's my problem, not your
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's part of it. Oh.
Well, we can do things like if someone were to come from the community and say they weren't on campus already, we can pay them for like gas, right? Because then they had to actually use more resources to get to campus. Whereas like if a student's just coming from the pool and they're already on campus, we wouldn't. So I think that is sort of built in, but it's not quite what you're saying, Garrett, in the same way, I think.
No, and the other thing that Garrett said, that I said something that what I said didn't fit what Garrett said. When Garrett was talking about bringing it back to the other, bringing another person, bounty isn't the right way to think about it, because Garrett wasn't suggesting that you're just rewarding somebody for being 2 people. It's that you're
No.
bringing a special other person that is somebody you trust.
Right. Right.
I don't know how you do that. It made me think too. It's like, I guess there's another thing is if you come to them, that's part of maybe you feeling some safety. Like if you were, I don't know.
Yeah, so
come-
that's like us going into the schools, going to, you know, to recruit older adults, we've gone to, like, we've taught classes in the continuing ed, like older adult program on campus. And then we've said, hey, if any of you want to come to our labs, feel free. But they've been through a whole hour with us of a lecture, right? So they kind of got a sense of who we were and maybe trust us a little more.
That goes back again to the permanent. I feel like maybe I living in a fantasy world, but that permanent person, organization, whatever, let's say it was a campus office,
Yes.
if they know that person and they're contacted through that person to do something,
Yes.
it'd be more.
So we
trusted.
actually advertised through this program. It's called OSHER on our campus. And we actually sent an email and said, we're looking for older adults to participate in this study. And because it went out through their email, we got so many more respondents because they trusted the organization, right? And they knew that they had vetted us and that if they trusted us, then they would call. So we literally had like 50 people email us in the first half hour that the email went out, which was crazy, like never happened before. But I think it was because it was sent out by a group that they knew, and they get a newsletter from every other week, right?
Mhm.
So I think this partnering with these groups is key. And the question is, like what Grace was saying, are there centralized groups like this on campuses already? I think there are, and many
Groups like what? What do you mean? Do you mean
like what she was saying, like the clinical trial groups.
But
And
I'm
it's
thinking
their
about like
job, it's their job actually to have gone to the places to increase diversity, to try to get a diverse pool in, right? So when you go to them with your NIH targeted enrollment and you say, these are the percentages I need, they tell you whether or not they can get those percentages given the partnerships they already have.
Right, but those are still probably very medically oriented if they exist, right? Don't you think?
They probably are.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking like even just the general
I
student
mean, I
population.
don't think you're gonna train someone to like run a VR experiment. I guess you could, but you know, I think they're definitely more medically inclined.
But I was just thinking, for example, again, sort of self-serving, but then we have a DEI office at campus level, of course, and then there's one at College of Engineering, Computer Science, I'm sure every other place too. But it's like, could you work with them to both improve your recruiting language and
Absolutely, yeah,
stuff?
I think that's a really good idea, yes.
And
like,
then maybe
you know, thinking about things like having your consent form in multiple languages. Like when we went to these other countries, we had to actually like translate all of our consent forms, but then we were like, oh, great. Now we have this one in Spanish. We'll use that on our own campus, right? That type of level. So just having stuff like that done actually increases your odds of getting more people of different types, right, to participate.
Yeah, I wonder how we would get something like that approved through our IRB. Just think about UCF, right? I mean, you know that our IRB here is quite awful.
I mean, we just said we were going to have a Spanish version of it. They don't have someone to check that. I mean, they just assume you're going to have a native speaker.
I think here they would want to see it and they would want to
Someone
approve
would
it.
check it as a native speaker.
Yeah.
But then they'd have to find a native speaker of all of these languages that you could possibly
Exactly.
translate it into.
Well, we are a Hispanic serving institution, so I feel
No,
like
but
at least
say you wanted to have a German version or a Japanese version or like something really obscure, right?
Yeah, who knows what they'd want? They may want a certificate of translation or something.
I
like
mean,
that.
yeah, when we went to Ecuador, like this group, the Shuar, they don't speak regular Spanish. You know, we had to do the whole their version of Spanish. So the translator had to be someone on the ground there, you know? And the IRB was okay with that.
There's so many dimensions to this. But I do feel like for me, an overarching theme, it is related to Vera. For me, at the moment, an overarching thought is about the loss. I'd say inefficiency, but it's not just a matter of money, or it's not just efficiency, but the problems with everybody doing this over and over and over again. Just these fragmented in time and space efforts, and none of them are probably as good as they should be, and how bad that is for the population and how bad that is for the researchers. And could we do better
I was going to
somehow?
say that in some cases, our university has connections to some of these groups around like our valley, and they actually limit the number of people that can contact them at any point in
Yeah.
time.
Sure.
There is a bottleneck, there is a gateway, right? So
Yep.
you can't, to preserve the relationship, you can't just saturate it.
Yep. Makes perfect sense. Another thing I wonder about, this is sort of Vera related, sort of orthogonal to that, is this sort of, I don't know what to call it, citizen scientist aspect of it, which is we researchers want these people who are objective, independent, they don't know anything. And I get that. And maybe I'm not saying we want to do away with that, but is there a place for people who, like Vera, participant pool, who are more sort of longitudinally involved, and they're sort of team members in a way, and they participate, but they know their team members, they know their role is to be objective, they know that, but it's different than just a burden that says this every one time you ask me to do something, and I got to work it into my schedule. It's more they know. I don't know if I'd call it a job, but they have a role and they get something for it. Get something more for it.
Well, I think that you would totally, some MTurkers, it is their job, there is that aspect
Yeah.
to it. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it
Right.
would be really appealing for researchers, because you could form a relationship with a participant where you really could be sure to convey results to them on a regular
Right.
basis.
And they'd be more equipped to receive the results, more motivated, more
Exactly.
equipped to,
And you could also
work some-
think about asking longitudinal questions in XR, which
Yep.
nobody's done.
Right. I mean, I come back to, again, like I said earlier, it's like, even if Vera was in place tomorrow, we don't really have a mechanism for finding those people in the pool. We really,
Right.
I mean, what we punted on that, I mean, it's not a terrible punting, by budgeting to work with Prolific. And we have a letter from Prolific, and then what we said was we'll work to build our own pool kind of in parallel, but we always have
I mean,
Prolific there.
Prolific is great. We've gotten a lot of different types of people from Prolific recently, like, running a study with middle-aged adults with pain. And we found plenty of people in that age range who had like fibromyalgia, for instance, like that, selecting on very particular things. We were like, there's no way we're going to get 100 people. We totally did.
Mm.
So it's a good group because they have a lot more, I think, diversity than people realize.
And I'm not saying Prolific is bad or it should go away, but isn't it different? Like if we had, and I don't just mean profit versus nonprofit, but if I don't know. I don't know how Prolific goes about building up their pool, whether they have ethnographers and whether they go to great lengths to find, SES populations and all these things we're talking about, or do they just email and have a website, people who self-select and are smart enough, have internet access, whatever, get all that, they get hooked up and sign up, go through all the hurdles. Is it still they have to come, potential participants, candidates have to come to Prolific, conceptually and almost literally, as opposed to prolific going out and actively trying to find those people and find out what would work for you to be in our pool. How much, what would you need? How would that work?
But you could imagine like something like Vera could try to do, to take on both approaches. So you go to people who already have head mounted displays, obviously, and then
Mhm.
you target groups that have not traditionally had access to head mounted displays, and you try to give those people the technology and see what happens.
Yeah, there could be so many kind of dual use thing, not dual use, dual purpose. So lost my train of thought. I'm not that jet lagged, but I just was thinking about multiple things at once. What was I thinking? It was that I guess, well, I was thinking of two things. One is just, oh, I know what I was thinking. Universities are maybe unique compared to like prolific in that they're geographically, at least at the moment, most of them, maybe not University of Phoenix or whatever, but geographically situated. And so I think about UCF. UCF has the
Yeah.
downtown campus, and around that downtown campus is this area called Paramore, which is a relatively low income area. And part of the rationale or motivation for putting that campus there was to, I don't know what the right language is, to help build up that community or improve the lives of those people in different ways, and not just for a job, but also through the university being involved with the communities more. So imagine that not as your only community, you got still students and you got all these other communities, but imagine that you had some people in the community that you could find who were sort of, again, citizen scientists who were permanently collaborators, if you will, on experiments with the university. So they again came to trust somebody at the university. I mean, it feels like it's not just serving the researchers, it's helping it could be good for you're done in a way that's good for the participants. And of course, also then for society as a whole, if you think about like Tabitha's diversified paper and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about bringing it to like community libraries, to school systems that are lower income, right? You could supplement those types of environments in ways that would be really interesting for researchers, but also really good for the people who would have access to this that didn't have
Yeah,
access.
maybe so. That's another thing I was wondering about is like, even there's waste in the headsets. Like, let's just say you find this person in Paramore or whatever, you're going to ship a headset. So they're going to do 3 experiments or 4 experiments a week, a month. I don't know. It's like you're not going to occupy their time for all that much time. So now they have this headset, they know how to use it. Is there something else they could be doing that would
with
be
it.
useful? So could they somehow get some bonus money or paid to go to schools to do demonstrations, or to go to schools and, I don't know, do something with
Yeah.
that technology and with their knowledge, with their, increasing knowledge about the technology. So they would relate more to like school kids in the area probably than I would walking into some schools somewhere. So if they became enough of an expert in XR, or experts are maybe too strong a word, but familiar enough that they could go and share it with other people. I don't know. Is there something else they could be doing with that other than just playing games and then occasionally doing an experiment? Some good.
I wonder if there's a way we could set something up with a library where if you checked out a headset, you had to participate in a study when you checked it out. Because I thought it too about like the downtime of one particular headset if one person has it.
Yep.
How they can't be using it all the time. So if we had it more centralized in some way.
Yeah, that's one of the benefit of using the population with headset settings. It's like turning it around. It's like
Yeah.
flip
Exactly,
classroom
yeah.
kind of thing.
They
You know,
already
they're using
have
it all
it.
the time for stuff for whatever
Yeah.
they want to do anyway. And this is just added in
Yeah.
this little thing.
Yeah,
It really does
totally.
seem inefficient to send something, all this stuff to one person. And it's
Well,
also
you could
like,
send it to a central spot. You could send it to a library and they get to use it. Or they don't even check it out, right? They could be using it there at the library. And in order to do so, they have to do this experiment to get access to it, you know?
yeah. I mean, we did, I guess, Garrett, we didn't write it in the proposal, but we did talk about people who we would send headsets. We would encourage them to use it for other things. We would encourage them to play games, to do all these other programs, and we would somehow try to capitalize on that, like ask them to share information about how much they're using it, what they're doing with it, things like that. So try to get something out of that, even if they weren't our experiments, try to get them to use it for other things. Now, if it's at a library or something, I like the idea of the science museum too. I like both of them. So I sometimes I get stuck in a mindset of the silver bullet, like the library's it. We're gonna get it there. It's gonna be everything. It's not gonna be it. It's gonna be that and 20 other things, 20 other approaches or techniques or avenues. I don't even know if our libraries, we grown-ups think about libraries as a place. Are those the places? Are there places now where people would go? And if they are, is it the library or is it something else?
I mean, the
Libraries
libraries
have,
are
like-
where people are going for like internet that don't have it. So you're getting lower SES people.
And
But you're
the
also, you know, getting families that are just still checking out books, right? So, yeah.
Okay.
Our library in Salt Lake has a movie theater in it. They show independent films. There's a
Wow.
coffee shop. Like, so people are going to the library because it's like this centralized thing downtown where, you know, there's a lot to offer there, not just the resources.
that's what I was gonna say too. The Orange County Public Library here has a photo studio. They can teach you how to use all this like broadcast equipment. There's a lot of like technology stuff that is, you know,
This is what I'm saying. I think libraries
You would
have had to
never
reinvent
access.
themselves. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you would never be able to access, and
Yeah.
then it's just available for free at the library.
Is there an O&R angle in here? Is there a Peter
I
angle in
know.
here?
I don't know.
An outreach or a STEM, you know, next generation kind of.
Well, the science museum, yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
When
totally.
Stevie's saying that, I'm thinking of the Science
Yeah.
Museum. Yeah. OSC. So, okay.
So trying to figure out what like a generalizable approach might be. Right? I mean, I could see this working from their side towards our side, right? Like if there's someone at the science center somewhere who's interested in that, opening it up to those opportunities, right? And then they would contact us, and we would, of course, want to work with them, right? But if we were to contact them, I think there's a 99% chance they would just say no. But like, unless we come up with a very concrete plan how this could work, tailored to their interests and challenges, etc. And so, is there anything more generalizable than like I don't know, a common procedure on how to approach those people, how to come up with a plan that works for at least a bunch of different like types of those institutes, like or places, or is there like at least a publication where someone just outlines, okay, this is like those are guidelines on how to do that. Like this is what worked in the past, this is what doesn't work.
With community partnerships, I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, but now that you're saying it that way, I just realized. So maybe I wonder about a partnership. I'm thinking of Brandon. Is that right? Brandon at the Orlando Science Center. He's the one who Peter is funding, Janine.
Okay.
And so Stevie, Janine's
Yeah.
also PI on a funded grant from the Office of Naval Research under the same program that we are under. And so the program manager's name is Peter. They have funded quite a large amount of money to build this exhibit at the Orlando Science Center, a permanent, really beautiful, big exhibit.
Yeah.
So imagine you work, instead of like partnering to do a one-off thing with, what about partnering with someone like Brandon, at least to figure this out? Partners too strong, but that's what they do probably already, is to identify
Yeah.
those communities and figure out how they go, because they want to get them into the science center, or they want to bring science to them. I think they're probably really thinking about those things. So if there was a way
Do they
to,
have programs where people get in for free?
I'm sure they do. Actually, I think the science center might be free generally. No? Okay.
I
don't
don't
know.
think, probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, it can't be. But I'm
So that's
sure
why
they,
the library is so great, because it's free to go in. And so everybody goes in, all walks of life.
so I'm thinking of like, is there like a public works kind of thing where people who get shipped headsets, so to sit around, they get to use that and go off and use it for other things. So they go to the library and they
Yeah.
run a session. They go to the museum and they sit around for 2
Yeah.
hours while people come by. So they get somehow paid.
Yeah, we've
do
talked
this.
about that like that's the way to do it. If you want to get kids or older adults, right, that don't have to come into the lab, could we go to that, right? And could
Yeah.
we go to different places?
But I'm saying
Yes.
the we who goes to them could be the
A paid
citizen
person.
scientist, a
It
paid
could be
person, a participant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good idea. Like soldiers.
Yeah, like soldiers, exactly.
Unity
But it's a
liaison.
little bit like public works, that they get
Exactly.
somehow, I don't know who
Yes.
pays them, but somebody pays
Yes.
them to go do that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I guess you, if one
good
thought
idea.
through, if one thought through sort of details is a scary word, but thought this through a little more, I can imagine a world where that person, that soldier, would go places and you would actually get information back. So it wouldn't just be, you know, displaying or showing or demonstrating this technology to kids in the library or the mall or wherever they would go, but it would be, I don't know, bringing back to the researchers some information, demographics or anecdotal stuff, something so that they could be paid. The paying them could be just like as if they were doing experiment, $15 an hour or $20 an hour,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
That if they could either get paid to do an experiment, and or they could get paid to go do some
To
soldiering.
run someone else. Yes.
Yeah, to run someone else, or just to talk with them. Yeah, to run someone else, to demonstrate it. And maybe it's not literally running the same experiment, but it's doing something.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that if we wanted to further this discussion, talking with someone like Brandon more, I think about it, would probably be a good idea. I don't know if he's the right person, but he would know who is the right person at the museum, because they
Mhm.
got to do this. They do this. They got to do this already. They are trying. I am sure they have federal grants, if they have federal money, anything they're doing, they're trying to find the kids who should be coming to the science center and seeing stuff, and trying to figure out ways to make it possible for them to do that, and finding them, identifying them, getting them there, probably working through schools, who knows.
Yeah, they bust in kids for the Otronicon event that
Yep.
we did demo at, so I'm sure
Yep.
there's larger initiatives too.
Right. So I bet there's sort of like the general fabric of how they do this, just the museum in general, and then also the special event things like a Tronicon and stuff like that. Yeah. Janine, you got to be tired.
I'm getting all.
Should we call it a day? Should we call it a day, guys? I mean, I'd love to sit and talk with you guys, but that's because it's middle of the day here, and I'm not that sleepy at the moment. But
My brain is running slower, so.
I know Stevie's up later than I am, so
that's true. That's true. Yeah, you guys with your Zoom backgrounds, I can't tell anything. I can't tell if it's night or day near you.
It's
it looks
really dark.
Yeah, looks like you're in Singapore. You should be. I see the Marina Bay Sands behind you, over your left shoulder. At least for me, what's your left shoulder? Which is somewhere right out here, but I don't know. I still want to think about the NSF thing some more. I just, not that, like I said, I'm money hungry, but I feel like there's something here maybe about
Yeah,
with a practical aspect of, but the practical aspect. So not maybe, I don't know if it's research per se, but maybe the research is developing the
no, but maybe it
interest.
is like what Garrett was saying, like writing some guidelines that people could follow to try to tackle some of this, like how do you get a broader participation
Right.
into technology-based research? That's what this is. So it's very different. That's the way I would approach it.
Yeah.
It's not like the normal participant pool, come in and do this experiment and walk out the door, right? It requires some tech savviness, which makes it harder to get to as many people. I think there's like a barrier in the technology, but
Could you ever imagine a partnership with a store, like a retail store, like
yes,
Target or McDonald's or
yes.
something, where they give you some
Walmart, they're
space?
already using
Walmart.
they're using VR to train people, right? I mean,
Yeah.
why we could just
But I mean, if you
partner
had a
with
little
them.
place somewhere in the store, and maybe it's guerrilla style, maybe it's wherever
Yeah.
they happen to have space at that time, but it's so then when the customers go in, they trust a little more because it's in Walmart, it's got to be
Yeah.
okay. These people
Yeah.
wouldn't be here if it wasn't Walmart. And
It's
then
a good
you could
idea.
do something there. And a company might feel good about doing that. There might be some benefit for them. And maybe there's they would even allow some of their employees to help. So maybe it's not all the time, maybe it's not 24/7, but
Yeah,
it's
but it's some of the
particular
time.
events
Yeah.
or something like that.
Hmm.
So there could be
When
partnerships.
When I think about that, I think that, of course, if we have an experiment that's super attractive, when it's fun, it's a game or something like that, then I think this could work, right? People would sign up if you just show it to them, like in a store or at a library, right? They would probably want to participate and they would stay engaged for however long the experiment goes, right? But most of our experiments, unfortunately, are not very interesting. To be honest, most of them are entirely boring. You see a red sphere in front of you and then it turns into a green sphere, and then you ask them to do something with that, right? It's completely boring.
Well, it's boring for you. Yeah.
So here's the thing, Garrett.
I'm just wondering if there might be some way to allow us to even run studies like that in a place that's not our lab, right? Something to make it attractive in a way.
Yeah, so this is what happened when we ran in all these field sites all around the world, is we had to make the experiments totally different. And people had not thought about this before, but like we had to make it so that you could understand this experiment if you didn't speak English, had never seen technology before in your life, like, had never had any formal schooling. This changed everything that we thought about experiments, right? But the truth is it turned everything into being more like a game.
Well, also, if it's Walmart, imagine that you partner with Walmart, and Walmart, part of the partnership is at a discount or somehow they make available like Walmart gift cards. So you have Walmart customers who are in there and they see this thing and they can go over there and get a $15 card that they can then go into the store, get a bunch of $15 worth of stuff and walk out of here with having not paid anything, or get that $15 worth of stuff. So the Walmart might like that because it's customer relations, it's building, loyalty, it's spending some money. So then even if it is boring, Garrett, even if they're presented with this opportunity, it's sort of like the optometrist or the pharmacy. There's this place over here you can go and be a citizen scientist.
It's more than just getting them to click through a study, right? It's getting good data. But if they're entirely bored the entire time and they're only doing it for the money, right, then you won't get any good data from that.
Right.
But so in the optimal case, they understand that they're doing a public service by participating, right? And how do you get them to that point where they're doing it for the right reasons?
It's not going to happen. Maybe, but in our experience, it's not going to happen, right? Those are the studies that you just run in the lab, right?
Yeah,
I think you're better off staying away from the stores though, because then you get into people thinking the study is affiliated with that store and that data will go to the company. Should just stick with the library. Maybe.
I mean, like I said,
there's not a cost to exist in a library, so that has that benefit of being, I think it's more trustworthy. If you,
Maybe,
if I
but if
go
you go into
to
Target
Walmart-
and there's a CVS, if there's a CVS in Target and you go in and give them your information, I don't think people are worried that Walmart's getting, so if the station was a UCF station, had university logo, signs and everything, and it was just in the corner here in the store, it might be okay. Same as CVS or, you know, whatever the optometry places are that are in like Walmart. It's just more
I don't know.
convenience. It's not, I'm not suggesting it's a Walmart branded experiment station. It's,
But even if it's not, I think it'll have that connotation because you
It could be.
partnered.
but I think it would be interesting to explore it, to try it. I think, I don't know. I mean, you know, maybe it's part of the NSF grant. Is you find somebody like Walmart who's willing to partner with you to try it out, and you could do it in baby steps. Like, I don't know, collect information about who in the store would be interested in doing that, willing. They've come there. There's not a transportation because they've already gotten there. However, they're going to get there. They got there. They're there. They're probably not rushing around if they're Walmart shoppers. It's not like they're going in to get their one thing and rushing out. They're probably going in to buy a bunch of stuff. So anyway, I don't know. I just trying to think of ways to leverage existing places like the library. So it can't be, well, I shouldn't say can't be. I feel like it shouldn't, if you're going to do this, it shouldn't be just one place. Then you're
Right,
gonna,
yeah.
it's got to be multiple attempts at multiple
Well,
places.
and also because if you're in smaller towns, they're not gonna have huge libraries. It's not gonna exist. So again.
And libraries are pretty specialized place. I mean, Walmart or something like that, you're going every week, probably. They're buying
Yeah.
groceries, they're,
Exactly.
yeah, interesting. You'll get all the drunken people, you'll get everything. You'll get
a lot of people.
get a lot of different people. You're really diverse. But so, like I said, maybe
All
there's
right,
something
I'm
in
going to
something like that
bed.
for an NSF proposal. Go to bed.
Yeah.
Good night. Good
Stevie
night. And
should
thanks
go to
for
bed
hanging out with
too.
us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should just call it a day. What do you think, Garrett? Okay with that?
Yep, I think
There's a
that's
lot
good
of good
plan.
ideas that came out of this, though. Those speakers were great. Nice job putting them together.
Yeah, and I think we should maybe invite some of them to Dagstuhl. I mean,
I was putting them in the list, Karen, as they were talking. I was like putting people in, especially Dylan, because like, of course, but I mean, Shuri would have said him anyway, but yeah. No, I thought the
that's
same.
interesting. That's a great idea. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
all of those people I feel like would be prime candidates for what we're thinking.
When you guys
about.
get the Dogstool seminar proposal more fleshed out and everything, let's step back and
Yeah.
there's no reason to put all our eggs in that one basket. You know, we talked about doing another like a visioning workshop for AR-ish or alt AR, whatever it was we were talking about. But I mean, we can
also write an NSF workshop. They would totally fund something like this easily.
Yep.
We didn't get digital. We could send it to NSF probably in a very similar format.
Yep.
So,
and we could do a combination of two, where we have a workshop like we did ARVW, where many of the people pay their own way and they show they don't need NSF's money, but then NSF grant comes in and allows us to bring people like Dylan and who presumably don't have that kind of money.
Yeah.
Okay. Good night, guys.
Have fun in
Jared,
Singapore.
Matthew, see you guys around. Okay, thanks. Stevie,
Yeah.
great job, Stevie, and everything.
Yeah, thanks,
you've
Stevie.
done
That was
with this.
great.
Really, I'm impressed, and let's not let this just lie fallow after this. Let's move this forward somehow. Okay, good night, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Or good.
problem.
Okay, so welcome everybody. Just a quick check. Everybody can see me, hear me, and also can see my slides. Okay, perfect. So yeah, welcome to our workshop, Venus. It's about serious VR, VR applications, simulations, and games, and therefore VR is enabling the knowledge game for the user. I'm David, and together with Christian and Gudrun, we are from the TU Munich. We are organizing this workshop. And yeah, we have on the next slide here a short agenda. We'll start with an introduction. Afterwards, Christian and I will talk about the white paper of this workshop. It's also called Venus, where we are showing some examples about serious VR, and then followed by the workshop papers. So We are only a small group, so I think it's suitable to do a short introduction of ourselves. So my name is David. I'm a postdoc at the TU Munich. And yeah, my research is focused on mixed reality more precisely, serious mixed reality. So I'm using AR, VR to transfer knowledge, and also in the combination with games. So serious games with AR, but also with VR. Okay, so then I hand over to Christian, and then we will go through my list here, so everybody has the chance to say some introducing words. So the name, and also probably some words about the interest in VR, and more precisely serious VR. So
okay,
Christian.
then also warm welcome from me. My name is Christian. I'm also in the same research group as David, and yeah, my interest is a lot about virtual reality and augmented reality, tracking objects, including them into the virtual world, or developing solutions for specific target groups for research projects. And I'm really happy to talk today with you all.
Okay, perfect. So the next one in my list, Gudrun.
Hi, hello. I'm at ISMAR itself, so there's a lot of noise behind me because we just a coffee break right now. I'm in the same group with David and Christian. We are doing augmented reality at TU Munich, and I will cut this short because there's so much noise in the background. So I'm looking forward to an interesting workshop. I wish you were all here. It's great being in Singapore and meeting people here in person.
Perfect. Greetings to Singapore. Okay, the next one, David Wutke.
Hi, everyone. First of all, apologies for the delay of getting on. I know there were some issues with the link. So I'm David. I work with the Technical University of Munich at our TUM campus in Heilbronn, and I use virtual reality in teaching. And today I'm here with a co-author of mine and a colleague, Muna Moadika, who will actually be co-presenting with me the paper in this workshop. And I look very much forward to learning more about innovative applications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lina.
Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Lina. I'm from the University of Hamburg in the Department of Human-Computer Interaction, which I studied in my bachelor's, and now I'm in my master's currently. And I'm very excited to be here. The interest in VR just started in my bachelor's, so with a lot of application for serious purposes, but also just for general enjoyment and fun. But in general, yeah. Just very excited to be here and talk with everyone here about these exciting papers.
Okay, thank you. Dan Archer.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks. It's really nice to be here. I'm actually here in Singapore, but we'll leave my camera off. But I'm a doctorate student at UCL London under Anthony Steed's Virtual Computer Interaction Group. And I'm really excited to be part of this. I also run a company called Empathetic Media. So you can see the logo there. We make a series of simulations and virtual reality exposure experiences, largely for the Quest 2. So I'm really excited to be part of the discussion.
Perfect, thank you. Lisa Barth.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa. I've studied at the HCI lab with Lina and Pauline at the University of Hamburg, but I'm now starting my master's in HCI at the University of Munich, so at the LMU. And yeah, I'm really interested in serious VR, especially in the medical and therapeutic field, and I'm really excited for this workshop.
Thank you, perfect. Pauline Hilpert.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm also a master's student at the University of Hamburg in informatics, and also did my bachelor's degree, such as Lena and Lisa, at the HCI Human-Computer Interaction Group here in Hamburg. Also, yeah, very interested in XR and serious games and therapeutical settings, and looking very much forward to this workshop.
Thank you. And Cassidy Nelson. Sorry, but we see you, but we cannot hear you.
That better? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Sorry. So my name is Cassidy. I am a PhD student with Dr. Gabbard at Virginia Tech. I'm also in Singapore, so happy to bump into any of you that are here. I can see Gudrun's over by some of the rooms. I was like, oh, I know she's here. My research is, so I kind of multi-pronged. The research that funds me is not related to this at all. It's augmented reality for emergency response, but I am working on a couple papers of AR for serious games. I know that that's AR, not VR. If this allows AR papers, like let me know and I'll submit one next year, but it looks like it's strictly VR. I'm really excited to be here though. I wanted to come to this workshop the last couple of years, but haven't been able to because it always had a conflict. And I thought it was going to conflict with another workshop that I was running this morning, but was so glad that it didn't. So I'm really excited to be here and meet all of you.
Thanks, Cassidy. Just one sentence about other workshops and also serious AR. We had one workshop at the IEEE VR about serious AR. So probably, Cassidy, there's the chance to submit next time. And now we are talking about serious VR. The workshop about serious AR is called Ares. This one is called Venus. So we're sticking to this structure of Roman gods. So it's pretty easy to remember. Okay, so I think everyone had the chance for the introduction, and there is no one lost in the waiting room, and therefore we can start with our Venus white paper. Yeah, in this paper, we are talking about our serious VR, our projects, and I will start with the serious VR and cultural heritage part. And the first example is an example from the art section. It is about paintings by the German artist Caspar David Friedrich, and we are using VR to show these paintings independent of the user's location. That's the first point. And the second one is that we are transferring the user into a world that is composed of these paintings. And therefore the user has the chance to experience these paintings, to explore them, and also to get some informations to get the higher meaning of the painter. And before I show you a short video, I will shortly explain these two paintings. The first one is the Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, and the other one is the Stages of Life. The first one, the Wanderer, the painting is shown in Hamburg, Germany, and the other one, Stages of Life, is shown in Vienna, Austria. So it's pretty difficult to see these two paintings at the same time. And yeah, we are using that paintings to compose the VR world. In the original painting of the Wanderer, you would see an old man from behind, which is looking above this sea of fog, and he's standing on a rock and looking around. And in VR, you as the user are transferred into the head, into the eyes of that old man, and then you are able to look around. You will also hear some music about this romantic era. And yeah, when you then turn your head, you will see the other picture, the other scenery taken from the other picture, the Stages of Life behind you. So you will see a beach and also a sea. in the original painting, you would see many ships and different kinds of ships, because these ships are representing the stages of life. So you will have small ships sailing to the horizon, bigger ships, and also ships coming back from the horizon, and then a shipwreck on the beach. And it's pretty difficult to get this idea when you're only looking at the picture, because this picture is static for sure, and you are not able to get these information so quickly. So in VR, we can use an animation to show this higher meaning, to explain this higher meaning of the painting to the user. So yeah, we are starting with the small ship. You're only seeing this one small ship, which is getting bigger while sailing to the horizon. Then the ship is turning, it's shrinking, and then it crashes and is a shipwreck on the beach. So we have, yeah, the life shown by ships, with a small ship, birth, the life, and then the death at the end with the shipwreck. Okay, so I'll show you here this short video. So we are turning around, you see all the ships, then here the animation, ship is sailing to the horizon. And you can also look back to the sea of fog. Yeah. So as I said, we have these VR world, and you can use here VR in a serious context to get in touch with these masterpieces by Caspar David Friedrich. Okay, let's jump to our next projects. When we are looking to the right-hand side, we see these ancient temple and some statues before. That is also a serious application when we are using VR to do some time traveling. In this case, we are traveling to ancient Olympia in ancient Greece, and yeah, we can walk around ancient Olympia. We recreated the scenery by using archaeology or maps from the archaeologists. And we're also focusing on the statues. We got real scans from statues from the archaeological findings. We got these scans from the museum here in Munich, the Museum of Casts of Classical Statues. And yeah, so you're able to walk around to get a closer view to the statues. You can walk around them. You will also get some information by activating an audio guide, and therefore it's a pretty immersive way to experience some ancient history. On the left side, you see a prototype of a game. So we are switching now the topic. It's now about serious VR games. This is the starting point, the menu of that game. It's about the Second Punic War, so the war between the Romans against Hannibal. And here in the start menu, you are able to try out some Roman weapons. We have these the sword, the gladius in the right hand, in the right hand, and in the left hand, the shield, the scutum. And yeah, the next step after trying that out, you will find some kind of battle simulator where you can play through the battles of the Second Punic War. It's a bit like Age of Empires, but in this case, we are focusing on the historical facts. So you will be able to stick to the history. So you can do the certain steps we know from the history books, and therefore you can play the Battle of Cannae, the very famous battle where Hannibal had a great victory, and yeah. So you have here new possibilities to get in touch with ancient history, and also here these the history about the Second Punic War. Here another example, HeroQuest. This game was created for PCs and tablets, and we had the idea to transfer knowledge about ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs to the user. We have chosen this topic because there are no natives to find, so we can simply check at the end if the users have learned some hieroglyphs. And the setting is that you as the player are in an ancient Egyptian temple, and it's a kind of an escape room, and you have to move through the rooms, you have to learn the hieroglyphs, and you have to use the hieroglyphs to open the door to the next room. I will show you this principle also in the video, but just here to get an idea how this game is working, we have here the first room. You can select the foot and place it back to the statue. So this way you are unlocking the hieroglyph foot, which means B, so the letter B. And in the next step, you would grab the arm that is lying around, place it back to the statue, and you will unlock the letter A. That sounds pretty simple, but it's getting more complicated. You can select the transliterations, these letters you have unlocked then on the right-hand side, and you have to click on that letter and then on the corresponding hieroglyph on the door. Then the door will open. If you have done these 2 times for A and B in this case, the door will open, and then you are in the next room where you have new riddles, new hieroglyphs, and also a new door to open. On the left side, you see our example for a VR version, a serious VR version of HeroQuest, and I can also show you a video in a second about that. As I said, we have this PC and tablet version. We had also some studies with our students from games engineering, but also with the Egyptologists, and got pretty results. And now, we are thinking and planning to do another study in VR to check if VR is changing the knowledge transfer. So here our video. We are simply starting here in the tutorial just to get used to the controllers. Therefore, you are grabbing these spaces and placing it in the shelf. That's the first riddle. So it's not a riddle, but it's more a training for you. And now the door will open and you are coming to the room you have already seen. You are unlocking the different letters. And then we're able to move forward. And the same principle goes for these vases. There are hieroglyphs on the vases. You're selecting the corresponding one. Therefore, and this way you can destroy the vases, and you will need to use that in the different rooms to get hints, objects to unlock more hieroglyphs. Okay, I think you understand the basic principles of the game. Let me shortly summarize. We have seen now serious VR with applications and serious games. About the applications, we use that to create cultural experiences independent of the user's location. And we are also using that to create new perspectives and guidance. So thinking of the VR experience of Ancient Olympia. There's the guidance, the audio guide, and we've also these location independence with Olympia and also the project with Caspar David Friedrich. And then serious games on the other side, you have interactive learning and immersive gaming in a learning environment. So we are using VR to get the user, the player, immersed, to get them right into the game. And yeah, as I said, we are hoping to increase the knowledge gain, the knowledge transfer in VR to get the user to learn more hieroglyphs or more informations about the Second Punic War. Okay, so that's the first part, and now I hand over to Christian so he can talk about his examples in our Wiener's white paper.
Okay, maybe one thing before we transition to the next presentation. At the end, we're going to have a small discussion section with a Miro board where we can like collaborate together, talk about other ideas, how we can extend these projects or new projects. So in the end, there's going to be lots of possibilities to communicate. And also after my presentation, there's going to be a question session about the white paper. So I will start also talking about it. Is it visible, the presentation view?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to talk about the 3 other projects that we had on the white paper. This is more in the direction of digital twins or applications for older adults. Also the integration and development of controllers or hardware for virtual reality. The first one is going to be the virtual reality framework for older adults. We developed a small application called GeoTravel for this target group. The second part is augmented virtual reality smartphone that is integrated in a virtual reality supermarket. And that's basically a digital twin simulation. And the third one is the building blocks for a specific controller. This is a multidimensional force feedback controller that has some unique capabilities. So I will start directly with the topic about older adults. And after each of these presentations, I will show you also a slide of how we develop these, so some information about frameworks we used, etc. And also I go a little bit over the part why this fits into our workshop. And I think the topic about older adults fits really well into it because that's a very serious topic and we can maybe develop applications in VR for this target group that benefits them quite a lot. In general, this is not new. A lot of people have focused on the development of such applications since many years. For example, one paper from 2003, so quite a long time ago, already mentions these kind of concepts. Classical projects, as you see at the top, is exit games or rehabilitation games. Also on the right side, you see a picture from a travel application that's also quite a traditional approach of bringing this target group into VR. In general, we work a lot with other groups there, including, for example, Professor Steinecke, that we already collaborated for a small user study with. And we also have today people from this chair here in this workshop. And yeah, a lot of people looked at these concepts, and in our opinion, there are still some leftover challenges that we want to address with our application. And I will directly dive into it. And we also made a travel simulation that is short TS. And our point here was at first to overcome some limitations, such as the entry barriers or like how people can interact with VR, and also some security concerns that we actually had with the specific target group in VR. So I will show you some of the concepts that we worked out and that we are still testing at the moment. And yeah, we can maybe have a discussion later if this goes in the right direction or what other people think about it. For example, here, when we started giving older adults access to the VR headset, the controller for them was often perceived as a gun, and this was kind of difficult for them to make them use it. And also because it has lots of buttons, it's very confusing. So our idea and solution for this, and I call this a bit of an entry barrier because lots of people reject them using the system in the first place, is to put the VR headset on their head and then give them the controller in their hands while it is being depicted inside of the VR world as this walking stick. And the idea with our travel simulation is they start on top of a mountain and then they can use this travel stick to point at a certain location and then travel to this. For example, from the mountain, you point on the city down and then you can travel there. And this is a very natural way of interacting with the world. And so they are more comfortable starting in this environment. So if you're then coming down from the mountain, you end up inside of the city. And one of the things that you see, for example, here on the right image, we wanted to find out what kind of interactions is the best when you travel to different places. And we used 3 different kinds of interaction possibilities, all working with this walking stick. And first one, you have these little boxes that are popping up when you look in a certain direction in this 360-degree image material. Or you had a menu where there were boxes, but you were not able to see the background anymore. And the third way is what you see down here. These are 3-dimensional objects that you can touch basically with your walking stick to travel to this specific position. This was the small user study we also conducted. You will later see a picture about that. Then we have this small little companion here that guides people, because we soon discovered that older adults are a little bit confused if you don't give them a specific task and help them. So we put in this companion to support them. Companions in general are a little bit difficult because if you take animals that look too childish, older adults tend to be very rejective about that because they think it's a child game. Is another problem that some research is often not looking into. And so we took this dog because it is also natural. You basically go on a walk with this dog through the different places, and that makes a natural interaction. So you can travel actually freely to different places. We have a Flickr API integrated here. So you can choose other 360-degree image material that we have not prepared. For those places we have prepared, like for example, Munich here, we have also some storytelling that comes into place. So then I talk about the security concerns I mentioned previously. With older adults that were never in a virtual world, there are some things happening that not many people are actually looking at. And this is the confusion that a purely virtual world is giving them when they still feel that they are sitting on a chair, for example, and putting their arms, as you see here, on the table. They have physical feedback, but they don't have the visual feedback anymore. And as I said, for people who are not used to virtual worlds, it's actually a huge problem. And what will happen is they will try to hit on the table because they feel something but don't see it. And also what happens, I call it a little bit of a panic attack could happen. And they look frantically to the left and right because they can hear, for example, people, but don't see them anymore. So the idea behind to solve these problems is we added a small camera that we attach in front of the headset that looks downward, and that there's a little marker that we can track on the table. And whenever we notice a frantic movement, which normally is this indication for that, or people move their head to left and right, we use this camera frame to put the image in the video stream of this webcam inside of the VR world, basically giving them some kind of anchor to the real world. So they see their hands again, they see the real world, they see that they're sitting on the table, and this gives them a little bit more comfortable connection, and therefore hopefully prevents this. It's very hard to actually test and evaluate it because, as we all know from the ethics side point of view, we should not trigger something like this. So the only option for us is to run multiple tests and see if the situation comes up, or ask them if they look down, if they think this helps them. So it's quite a difficult feature actually to test. What we also wanted to look at is multiplayer. As we have seen in previous studies from other platforms, touchscreen devices, and other technology that was tested with older adults, if there are multiple people that can play together, the motivation, openness for this technology rises drastically. And that's also what we have seen with solutions like this. And so we thought about why we're not including a multiplayer feature. And the problem hereby is, how do you represent a person in the VR world? Even if you would track people like we did with the marker, they all have a headset on. So it's kind of difficult. So we came up with the idea of using 3D avatars, take an image in front with the person, cut this out with the OpenCV library, and place it on top of this avatar, as you see here on the right side. And then people can basically, like in a small travel group, travel together to different places. So this was a picture from the small user study we had in Hamburg together with the Professor Steinecke team. You see here, this was the Vita lab. And we tested out the interaction methods. You see here, the person is using just one VR controller. So this is basically a representation of the walking stick. And we tested out the different capabilities of the early version of this application. We then have reworked it, and we are now looking for more evaluations in the future. So together also with Professor Wuttke, who is also here today. And yeah, I think we can still get a lot of important and necessary insights into these entry barriers and also kind of security concerns that are here with this technology. So when we talk about VR for this target group, we also have to think about it when there are some disadvantages, why we actually use this technology in the first place. And for us, this was actually a tough question because, to be honest, if we would use like a large screen television or with today's really good beamers, a beamer like cinematic setup, we could also put multiple people in there and let them travel to different places. The problems would be that in this scenario, they cannot really choose much. You would have to make some kind of other user interface. So VR has an advantage there. But also there are the security concerns, as I said previously. So we thought about improving the capabilities of what VR could offer this target group, basically more immersion and therefore also more in the direction or pushing more in the direction of presence. And the idea hereby came to reach more sensors than just the visual and audio sensors. And we used a system that we call VRTS augmentation system. TS in this case stands again for the travel simulation. So basically we augment senses. In this case, what we actually build is a small gadget that generates wind flow, either warm or cold, or also generates smells based on an olfactory system, basically based on oils. And with that, we want to trigger a much more deeper connection to a place that they are actually traveling. So this is the kind of building process. Here you see the olfactory system with the oils. In the middle, you see the airflow control that is has this part at the front with these fins that you can actually control, and a self-made ventilator control. And on the right side, you see our heating system that provides the warm air. And then we use this all in the system, as you see here, to push it towards the person. This is how it looks finished. We actually built two, but the second one on the right side does not have the warm airflow and olfactory capability. It's just airflow, but therefore we can still simulate some kind of stereo setup. We built for Unity a small application that we can integrate these two systems inside of Unity, and therefore bring them to our VR application. I've prepared a small video for you to show you the demo that we have made with it. So you see, these are the two systems. There's a little bit of paper to indicate when they are turning that they produce a lot of airflow. So you will see now starting the system on the left side and on the right side. So they can be individually controlled. And now you select basically your scene, and we have two demo scenes with it. First one is in the ocean. We have a little bit of a particle system here going. And if you look here, the wind is currently coming from this direction, as you see from the particle system. This one starts first. Then this one, if you turn further, next. And if you go further again to the right, this one will stop again. And if you turn further, also the left one will stop. With that, we have also some salt oils in there that will simulate a smell of like the ocean. With a second demo that is in the forest area, you see again a particle system. We also have prepared and calibrated these systems for this kind of situation. So if we go further, what we want to achieve with all of that, I think the two parts are very important. Like first, accessibility of VR. This is what we talked at the beginning. This is what we placed here. First of all, we should somewhat address security concerns with this target group, and also the entry barriers that we talked about. And then a more top kind of view on it is the intuitive interactions, so that people are able to actually use the system. And then here on the x-axis, we have the perceived usefulness. You see here, this is the motivation aspect, that you can actually travel with other people. You have the perception that you are on the go with them, and you can make own decisions where you travel to which kind of place. And this is much more different than compared just watching television, for example. And also what we talked here, in our opinion, we have to strengthen the kind of things that VR could offer. Therefore, it's immersion, and the result, if you have a lot of immersion, you are resulting into presence. And this is what we try to, for example, achieve with the VRTS augmentation system, to add more depth to this kind of perception, to being at other places. It's especially important for maybe older adults that suffer from dementia. For them, this kind of solution can be a good way of bringing them to other places. So to summarize this, we have worked here with standard hardware. First of all, we use the Oculus Quest 2, and we use a standard small webcam attached to it, the OpenCV market tracker library that you can find in the asset store. And our VRTS augmentation system is quite complicated. We have a lot of custom built parts, but it's still based on an open microcontroller. So we can still, as you have also seen, control lots of capabilities of the system. It's quite freely accessible. Then for our goals of VR, we trigger the memories and enhance the virtual experience through interaction. That's what I said previously. You can choose where you travel to. We augmented the senses, basically reaching more senses in general, as you would normally expect from VR. And the goal with all of these is to basically achieve presence, basically that people feel that they are at a certain place in a certain time and can basically connect to this past. Then open challenges, we have to finalize our system, and we want to go in broader user studies with it. With that said, I'm happy to talk with you about later some ideas or some things that you can mention for this kind of project. Now we're going to the second part, and this is about two individually but then combined solutions. First of all, the augmented virtuality smartphone. Basically, the idea is we want to integrate an existing smartphone of a participant for a user study into a virtual world, but not just any virtual world, in this case, a virtual reality supermarket, because we want to test and evaluate the capabilities of health applications for mobile devices that you can, for example, download from the App Store. And to do that, we want to have a standardized environment, because with many other user studies, what we had as a result in our project Enable, that this was a part of, the problem is people go to very different kind of supermarkets and grocery stores, and there's lots of confounding factors. So you cannot really standardize that. So the only solution hereby is to maybe generate some kind of digital twin of a real supermarket and then place people with their smartphone and this application side of that. And what we've done for that is we developed our own environment, which is not something new. Again, lots of people did this previously. For example, people do this for shopping behavior of customers, and also for lots of kind of health related or therapy, rehabilitation related use cases. So it's a quite a typical use case. In fact, in the last years, there was lots of research in this area, but there are still some limitations, especially for most of these, like supermarkets consist out of just one or two shelves, and you cannot really test things like applications for mobile devices, which is actually the number one thing where people are getting or taking inspiration from if they're on the go. Then the integration of the smartphone, as I said, we wanted to integrate the smartphone into VR to use health applications. This has been tried also in some other experiments. Mostly people are using depth sensors or outside tracking systems. As you see also here, this was a depth sensor approach, but there are certain limitations to that, and we took our own stance on this kind of challenge. So first of all, we had to develop the environment, and we did this in Unity. And as you see here, this is a top-down view. It's a little bit like a dollhouse where you can place shelves with products in the virtual world. And then in the next step, you can take your VR headset on, and this is what you see on the right side, and you can actually walk through the supermarket with a shopping basket and can fulfill certain tasks, for example. I will show you now what we came up with after building this framework, and then I will go a little bit of how it was built and how the products, for example, were created. So this is actually a digital twin in size and in layout from a German discounter that we have tried to replicate as much as possible. And we also took in the German products that are realistic. A lot of other VR simulations take just assets packs, and these often are not real products. But for some test ground, for example, in the direction of health applications, you need to have real existing products. It's not possible to just use fake ones. And you also need some kind of values for the health nutrition labels on them. Otherwise, it doesn't make really much of sense. So these are some of the screenshots that we have from this environment. And we also started with the asset packs and looked at them. And as I said, we discovered very soon that products like that don't make much sense to integrate them. But they were a good experimental playground. For example, we needed to attach like labels on it, and how can you get the right size that you can still read them in the VR world, and how we can actually manipulate objects. And based on that, we actually start to build our own product configurator based in Unity. And you can basically use cylinders and boxes and can attach different colors to them and also place labels on them. The labels that have been actually taken from images from the real products, and we use the computer vision library, OpenCV, with the homography approach to cut out individual parts and then place them on these cylinder and boxes, and therefore get kind of realistic looking products. We also generate via the Open Food Fact API a nutrition table that we can place on these products then later too. But this was not enough for us because everything now is cylinders and boxes and is not really realistic. And so what we did in the next step is we also integrated a model creator that you know from other softwares like Blender. And with that, it is possible to build more realistic looking shapes. For example, this here is consisting out of a cylinder and half of a sphere and another cylinder on top, and then you get this bottle. It's a little bit like playing with blocks for children, but it's really intuitive and you can fast prototype these products. So we were actually able to generate more complicated shapes like the Nutella glass, which in fact is a squished cylinder. And so it's very hard to actually model, but with these new capabilities, we were able to generate a much more realistic looking result. With that said, we had realistic products in there. We had this layout that we took from the existing discounter that is very frequently being placed in Germany. And we then moved from the old HTC Vive system to the Oculus Quest 2, which allowed us to include things like hand tracking, which you see here. You can then interact quite nicely with these products. In the next step, we had a huge challenge of how we actually bring then the smartphone into the world. As I said, the problem hereby is if you use a virtual representation of a smartphone, it's very difficult to replicate health applications. So basically, if you develop one for iOS or Android, you would then have to make a stripped down clone of this for this virtual plane that you have in VR. And this doesn't look right and feels right at all. The second problem hereby is the interactions. If you have controllers from the VR headset, this is very difficult then to interact with some kind of touchscreen simulation. So the only solution that we came up with is trying to get the real smartphone into VR. And this concept is called augmented virtuality. I have here a short explanation again what augmented virtuality is. You already saw it in the first example with the older adults, and I will go over this here for those people who have maybe not getting in touch with this kind of concept, because it's not so frequently used, like, for example, augmented reality. So on the left side, you have the real environment, and on the upper side, you have our digital twin here. That is a pure virtual world where nothing is real, everything is rendered. So these are the two extreme points, basically. And if you look into the middle point here in this void, there are two things you can position. First of all, this is augmented reality. And if you look at Pokemon Go, it's not a really nice example of an AR application, but most people know it. You can use your smartphone, you have a camera stream, and then you can place the virtual objects on top of this real world. And basically you get the illusion of the fusion of both. And so augmented virtuality basically is on the more right side here from the virtual world, and it's basically the opposite or the switched kind of concepts behind augmented reality. So it is a virtual world in the background where you take something out of the real world, something tiny, for example, our smartphone screen, and you place it inside of the virtual world so that you have a small little window that is being tracked from the real environment. So, and this concept that you have seen here is quite famous. It's the relative virtuality continuum, and basically describes the space of mixed reality. So this is the more advanced prototype, which we worked on in the last months. And we basically took this early concept that you've seen also in the previous slide and advanced it in certain areas. Like, for example, we put a virtual screen on the markers that we use in each corner to track the smartphone display, to basically hide them. And also we have UV Interact for self-made applications. These can be Android or iOS applications that we develop and want to test in our environment. And we can basically connect the phone to the VR system and then also transfer things like the gyroscope data to rotate the smartphone or other data with which kind of products you're interacting with. And you can test even futuristic concepts like fake augmented reality in this virtual world with it. And in general, it's the same idea. We position a webcam on top of the head-mounted display to track these markers. I have a small demo video here for you to see the latest results. And you see here we have configured this ghost hand of the hand tracking. And you will see an overlay with your real finger that you can see on the touch screen. So the first situation here, this is actually being the tracked screen that is then integrated into the VR world. And you see this really fits well with the finger. And this is something most people from other projects forget a little bit. If you really want to interact with applications and you want to, for example, search for different products, this is very hard to realize. You need to see your fingers. And that's the reason why we also went with this half transparent look. What you see later, now the finger is gone, this is actually screen transfer. Even if you are not looking at the device, if this is one of the applications we connect to the system via the UV Interact framework, we can actually transfer the screen to the system. So even if tracking is potentially shortly lost, if you look away, etc., you still have the hand here, which fits very well to your fingers, and you can still then interact with the device. This smartphone is really tall. This is actually the true case. It is the Samsung Note, and this has a very tall screen. So the ratio is the right thing here. With that said, this is the UML diagram from the system. And what we plan to actually do is we plan to release both things. So we plan to release one framework that is the development and creation of digital twins, basically all this kind of taking German products. You can also take products from other countries and then create your own 3D models that you can integrate in your Unity applications. There are other advantages to this kind of approach. You can have high efficiency, for example, compared to assets that you load in that you have maybe generated in Blender. And also the smartphone approach, this tracking idea, where you just need the 4 markers and you simply place them on any kind of device or any kind of plane in this matter. And then you can integrate this into the VR world so that other people and research groups can also use this for their own studies. This project is already in use with another research group from the University of Tokyo. It's the team around Professor Inami. One of the students from our group actually visited this laboratory, and he took some of these developed results that we had, for example, the configurator of the supermarkets, and he basically used it to model a Japanese supermarket. It took the avatar approach that we had previously from the travel application. And the idea behind it is that, again, we are targeting older adults in this case, that we let older adults walk through this supermarket, and they can do basically virtual shopping in a much more realistic sense. And also they can interact with other people visiting this supermarket as if this would be real life. I have a small little demo video here as well, where you see the avatars in action with the hand tracking. And also you see here, you can take the these Japanese products that have been created with our framework out of the store. With that said, some summary here. It's very similar in terms of how we achieved augmented virtuality. We use the OpenCV market tracker, camera attached to Oculus Quest 2. UV Interact is maybe very interesting. It's a high performance framework. Also, a person from our group called Sandro Weber developed the solution, and it helps you to connect the devices much more stable than you have with other frameworks in Unity. The goals of VR here is we want to have a standardized, recognizable evaluation platform that we can use in different kinds of setups. And here we want to achieve also a tangible authenticity, basically a visual representation of the smartphone, and also in this sense, some interactions with it. And the idea hereby is also to achieve presence. That's the reason why we focus so heavily on basically generate a digital twin of the real world and letting people feel that they are visiting this store and doing shopping there. So we still want to have another user study with this AV smartphone, the reworked version that we currently have. And with that, we can then publish a paper, maybe roughly beginning of next year. And we want to also then release these frameworks so that, as I said, other people can work with them. So the last thing is going to be in the direction of force feedback controllers. It fits also in the topic of serious VR, because we can simulate certain sensors. You've seen this, for example, with the building of the VRT and also with the integration of the smartphone, that having other hardware for VR available can be a massive advantage compared to just having a standard controller. And this is not something that only we think. There's lots of people in the last years developing specific controllers for scenarios to provide, for example, more tactile feedback, because standard VR controller offer just vibration feedback. You see here two examples on the top. For example, Leviopol is very famous, also from the Inabli laboratory. On the right side, we have this Dragoon controller that gives you, through wind feedback and through the forest that you have, some kind of feedback. And the point that we see with most of these specialized controllers is there's just one controller for one purpose, and it's often very hard to build these kind of systems. So what we want to offer to basically add more realism to virtual objects is a controller approach that helps you to add force feedback to it and tactical feedback, and also that you can switch the use case for them. This is what we have shown last time in the ARIS workshop, and this was a crazy idea of generating force feedback by just placing these motors on the tennis bat, which was very top heavy, but it was an experimental test. And we actually achieved this when we run individual engines. We can simulate the force that a ball would give to this bat when it hits at a certain place. And with the more than advanced system that we wanted to build, that is again 3D printed and has different features, we then extended it with solenoids to add a more tactical feedback compared to the vibration motors that you know from standardized controllers. And we integrated this in a full-size 3D printed gadget that represents a tennis bat. And with that said, here is the newest version. We went through with building it. This is the update basically to what we had in the ARIS workshop. And you see the top, these are the engines that provide the force feedback. And here you can actually detach this head, and because they're just the engines inside and you have some pins here, you can potentially design another head that represents a different type of, for example, sports device, let's say a golf bat, which we had in the last workshop. And here inside of this bat area, the handle, you have different solenoids. It's really large here because we want to use this as a test platform. We have placed actually multiple solenoids inside in different kind of layouts and setups, because we want to test how we can deliver, like here in this case, for example, a realistic impact of a ball, not only feeling the force that pushes it back, but also feeling this impact itself. We also developed already a force feedback simulation in the virtual world, which is basically a tennis court here with some virtual little figures. With that said, the controller itself is actually fairly modular and is based on standard drone parts. And the microcontroller based system helps you to have good access, open access to it, because what we discovered when using flight controllers that you would normally use for such engines, they are advertised as being open, but in reality they're not really open, and you cannot freely program them so much. So we had to actually go for the struggle of trying to address the engines and the ESCs manually, but we succeeded with that. It actually feels really well. But we still need to solve some challenges for it. First of all, user study and also tracking of the controller, which currently is done through attaching another controller on top of this prototype. For example, controller from the Oculus Quest 2, or also one of these trackers that you know from other VR head-mounted displays. The goal hereby is to provide a customizable environment for sports, and also in this sense, a customizable controller. And this should deliver tangible authenticity, basically force feedback, and a tactical sense that you get a more realistic feedback. And our goal hereby is to reach immersion so that people not necessarily believe that this is the real world, because it doesn't look like it. If you see the tennis court, it's pure virtual, but that they can have the feeling of a real tennis bat being in their hands. With that said, thank you for your attention, and I'm open for question, and David as well. And after the presentations that we have from the other visitors of our workshop, then we're going to also have some kind of mirror board where you can interact with us and other visitors, talk about these projects, about other ideas that you have, etc. Thank you.
I have a kind of general.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have kind of general question. This is not explicitly about what you've presented, but so you both host Aries and Venus, at VR and here ISMAR, and I was just curious why the VR one is at ISMAR and the AR one is at VR.
Okay, that is a very interesting question. But in general, ISMAR and VR, besides the names, they offer for both directions. So augmented reality is also part of VR, and vice versa. ISMAR has also VR applications being shown on them. So it's a lot about mixed reality. And as you have seen with some of our applications, we tend to blur the borders, right? So AV can be considered not pure virtual reality, because yes, we go a little bit in the direction of the real world itself.
Yeah, no, I know that both conferences host both, but I just mean, my understanding is VR primarily is VR and ISMAR is primarily AR. Like they're both at both, but there's like a focus at each one. And so that's why I'm asking.
Actually, it's a good point. Maybe we should think about this a little bit more, David and I, when we decide for certain topics. It's maybe quite interesting. Yeah.
I was just curious. That's all. I don't know if there's a right or wrong way. I was just wondering because I knew.
Yeah, if it's in the perception of people, maybe that's the case. But in general, there are a lot of different projects. For example, on the VR, we had visited various other like papers and also workshop demos where there were AR topics on it.
Okay.
But
well,
yes, I think that can be seen that there's maybe a focus.
Okay. Well, very cool work. I like seeing all that you have done, all of you have done. It gives me a lot of hope, like in the sense, like I come from a department where nobody does this kind of work at all. And so seeing that it's out there in the wild and people are doing it makes me very excited.
No problem.
Yeah, it's always good. Yeah, it's always good to see and meet people that are also using mixed reality, and games, applications, and so on to transfer knowledge to the user. Also, in my case, I think nobody uses hieroglyphs as a topic, so it's always cool to meet people that are also doing some kind of strange things, and yeah, using AR and VR this case. If you are looking at the chat, you will find there the website of our workshop.
Yes, I
Ares,
saw that. Thank
we
you.
probably do a second version at the VR next year.
Oh,
But that's
so
the website from this year when you're clicking on that link.
so was it at VR last year the first time it had been done?
This year it was the first time.
This year
Yeah.
oh, okay. Well, that's the one I
Yes.
was referring to. I wanted to go to it last at VR, but I couldn't because I had a conflict.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the link is for the website from this year. Probably we are hosting another one, so you will also find that on our wiki page, and also in the chat you will find the link to the white paper of our workshop, where you can find the descriptions of all the projects we showed you, and also you can find there the papers we are referring in our talks. You can also find these in the references if you want to get more information about the projects.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Are
there
there
any other questions?
Yeah.
If not, well, as I said later, we have another open session, and then we can interact with each other. With that said, David, we can maybe continue with the other presentation.
Perfect. So you can stop sharing your slides, and I will quickly show again the overview. Yeah, perfect. So we have now finished our first part of the workshop, and we are now moving forward to the workshop papers. And yeah, we are starting with the extended reality training. And yeah, I think because my voice is a bit damaged, it's pretty cool that we have a video that I can show you. The extended reality training for business and education, that's a paper we did in cooperation with Straight Labs and the University of Applied Management. So Fabrizio Palmas from the University of Applied Management, Peter Niermann from Straight Labs, and Gudrun and me from the TU Munich. And it's about using XR, so VR for reality training in different fields. So we have a speech trainer and also a support for assembly tasks. And yeah, without spoiling too much, I will share the video with you, and afterwards I will try to answer possible questions. Fabrizio, who is the main author and also the leader of these projects, can't be here today. So yeah, now I'm switching to the video. Okay, I hope you can see the video, and I hope you can also hear the sound.
I am happy to be able to be here and explain you what we did in our research. So let's start. It is becoming increasingly important for corporations and educational institutions to utilize extended reality technology. Despite the extensive research conducted on the integration of extended reality into real-world applications and scenarios, little has been published on the integration of extended reality into corporate and educational training. As part of our research, we will explore what lessons have been learned from the integration of extended reality training into a real business environment and educational setting. Furthermore, our research will also address the challenges and problem-solving approaches necessary for success based on research that has been developed into commercial products. In times of crisis, it is important for companies to remember that corporate training is an important investment in the future. Despite budget cuts, businesses should aim to provide their employees with the education and training they need to succeed. This will help companies maintain a strong workforce and be better prepared for future challenges. Employees need to be provided with the skills and knowledge needed to work productively. In times of change, it's important for businesses to help their employees adapt quickly by giving them the tools they need and restructuring the organization as new technologies are introduced. The development of employees is crucial for companies, and their skills are a major factor in determining success. Employees need both hard and soft skills in order to be successful in the workplace. Hard skills are those that are learned through specific training or experience, and enable an employee to do their job effectively. Soft skills, on the other hand, are interpersonal skills that help employees interact with each other effectively. Extended reality technologies are becoming increasingly popular in corporate training, and it is a term that covers a spectrum of immersive technologies that includes virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. These technologies can immerse employees in simulated environments and provide them with realistic experiences that can help them learn new skills. Another concept that has gained popularity in business and education is gamification, which can be used to support the learning process, provide intuitive feedback, increase motivation, participation, and fun. Palmas and Klinker have included these concepts in their definition of extended reality training, based on a continuum for XR training applications. They define it as follows: XR training is a purposely designed, immersive learning experience, which takes advantage of the appropriate technologies. These technologies engage and support employees when acquiring the knowledge and skills needed to drive the behaviors that impact specific business outcomes, which are aligned with organizational goals. Extended reality training has become an important tool for organizations to improve their learning abilities. By providing employees with access to learning content delivered through various media, companies can create a continuous learning process that takes advantage of the latest technological opportunities. Furthermore, to create an immersive learning experience, also transmedia storytelling can be used in different media and methods, allowing employees to expand their knowledge and skills in a variety of areas. Public speaking is becoming increasingly important in the business world, as it has the ability to inform, persuade, and entertain an audience. There are several key elements that make up a successful public speaker, including trust, presence, voice projection, body language, and the ability to connect with the audience. In order to be a successful public speaker, it is important to hone these skills through practice and experience. Virtual Reality Speech Trainer is an extended virtual training that enables people to improve their communication skills. It is based on our previous research that has shown its potential. Virtual Reality Speech Trainer users can practice presenting in front of a virtual audience in VR. This is done by immersing users in a simulated world and presenting them to a virtual audience in realistic presentation scenarios. User performance is enhanced by audience reactions that provide users with real-time feedback. Until now, our research has focused on validating the acceptance and effectiveness of virtual reality, and developing a different improved version that uses gamification to deliver direct feedback to participants. Despite the challenges faced by VR technology in terms of widespread adoption, there are a number of recurring challenges in business and education. One such challenge is the lack of powerful computers that support VR. In many cases, VR applications require high-end gaming devices that are not available in companies. However, we have developed a workaround for this issue by porting VR speech to standalone devices and creating an online platform to market it. Another obstacle for people who are not familiar with computer technology is understanding the complex VR applications. This presents a difficulty for people who might not have the knowledge or technical expertise to use them. Now, you can see the commercial version of the virtual reality speech training. virtual reality simulations provide an efficient and safe way for people to learn new skills. However, the learning process could be sped up by combining virtual reality training with gamification. Gamification approaches in virtual reality training can help increase training efficiency and improve task execution accuracy in a real field test. With our research, we wanted to investigate the feasibility of virtual reality training for training assembly tasks in a real environment. A gamified and non-gamified version of the same virtual reality training was used to compare two groups of participants, and each group was presented with subsequent tutorials that describe how to complete an assembly task. The virtual reality training environment and the 3D object to be assembled were created to reflect their real version. A cymbal boom stand is a well-known component of the drum set and was chosen for the assembly task because it is easy to imagine how to set it up without actually performing the process. In addition, correctly assembly of this object poses more challenges than many people realize. As a result of virtual reality training, both groups of participants were asked to perform the assembly task in real life. The time taken and specific errors during the training session were taken into account to assess the performance differences. According to the results, gamification has been shown to be beneficial in virtual reality training simulation, especially for participants who are unfamiliar with virtual reality. Virtual reality training is a commercial gamified extended reality training. This product was developed based on internal research across multiple industries and on prior knowledge gained in previous research and commercial projects. It combines game principles with immersive technologies to help people learn more sustainable and in a future-oriented way. The use of this cross-platform training application has the potential to create more engaging and effective learning environments using a non-linear dialogue system with various gamified mechanics and game elements. Furthermore, this extended reality training allows learners to receive feedback that is most relevant to their individual needs. It is clear that the way people learn is changing and that with new technology comes new ways of learning. However, several people still cling to the old ways and believe that they are still the best. This new learning concept developed by Palmas and Klinker combines video games, in-game advertising, learning, and communication strategies that are typically used in marketing. This allows for learning content to be integrated into the game through advertising strategies, while the video game is independent of learning content. This could ensure real fun while playing and, at the same time, the opportunity to learn. More specifically, the learning process is completely detached from playing a video game, since advertising communication strategies have the potential to support the learning process. Although this concept needs to be discussed and further developed to find its real-world applications, it has the potential to help younger generations learn more effectively and participate in the learning process. In addition, it has the potential to solve several critical issues of serious games, such as lack of fun aspects, low constant usage, and attractiveness compared to commercial video games. In recent years, the importance of turning research into a commercial product has been increasingly recognized. However, bringing a product to market is not an easy process, and comes with several challenges that must be overcome. Palmas and Nyman developed the 4-phase model that helps address real-world challenges and integrate extended reality training into companies. This model and the concepts behind it can also be applied by integrating extended reality training into an educational context. The use of extended reality technology in learning offers many benefits, such as the ability to explore new worlds and interact in real work situations. Additionally, XR can be used to facilitate distance learning. With the appropriate technology, students can remotely attend classes and participate in lectures and activities as if they were present in the classroom. There are some challenges to consider with the use of extended reality technologies. One is that not everyone has access to the necessary technology or equipment. Another challenge is that not everyone is familiar with the use of extended reality technologies, so digital skills are required to involve these people in training concepts in order to offer real added value. Furthermore, immersive technology skeptics point to the danger of over-reliance on technology and not developing core skills like problem solving and critical thinking. In summary, there are many potential benefits to using extended reality technologies in educational settings and corporate training environments. Although there are some challenges to consider, the benefits of using extended reality in these contexts outweigh the challenges and offer a new opportunity for learning and a brighter future. Thank you for having us.
Okay, so that was our first talk. If you have direct questions on that, I can try to answer them. If not, we can also do this after all the talks in a combined session.
I had a question actually about the speech trainer. I don't know, I can happily wait till afterwards.
Sorry, I just got that you have a question on the speech trainer, but didn't get what is exactly.
Yeah, no, just that I can wait until the end of the present. Well, basically, my question was if you knew anything about the metrics involved. It seems like a super interesting project, but I saw there was an analytics dashboard, and I was wondering, digging a little deeper how they, just some of the back end analytics for measuring progress.
Yeah. I probably can. These matrix at the bottom, you get some icons, and you will get some information about your way of speaking. So probably there is an icon flashing when you are talking too fast, or there's also an icon when you are just looking in one direction. So it's also tracked where you are looking at. And your speech is analyzed if you are using too much filler words. So then also an icon flashes. And it's also detected if you're walking around, what you're doing with your hands and so on. And afterwards, at the end, you will get these analysis. You just saw these stars at the end in the video, but you can also get deeper feedback on that. If that answers your question.
It does, yeah. Vielen Dank. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, if we have no further questions, I would hand over to Christian for the second talk, and in the meantime, I will prepare the video. So Christian, you can do a short introduction.
Okay. So the second talk is from Valentin. It was together a collaboration with the Iceland University professor Hannes. I cannot really speak his last name, that's impossible. And the topic is about augmented virtuality. So again, very similar to the other concepts about older adults and the augmented virtuality smartphone. And the idea hereby is to generate a trainer for special education situations. And these teachers need to learn skills when they deal with children that who have autism. And this is a very complicated situation, actually. And yeah, I think Valentin can give a really nice introduction into the complicated aspects behind it.
Hello and welcome to my talk on augmented virtuality training for special education teachers. My name is Valentin Antoni, and this work is part of my master's thesis done at Technical University of Munich and also in collaboration with Reykjavik University. My advisors during my thesis were Hannes Williamson as well as Christian Eichhorn, and also with me during the paper were Felix Maurer and Odile Cesari. Now, before we dive right into some technical details, I first want to have a short introduction to autism, as this trainer done for special education teachers is done for teachers who are working with children with autism. So, as just said, short introduction to autism and also to some of the previous work done on the project. Now, autism is a neurodevelopmental syndrome, and it shows in a variety of different ways. So autism is not just one single thing, but it's actually a whole spectrum, also often called the autism spectrum disorder. And it really shows in a variety of ways, for example, in problems or deficits in communication and social interaction, and often by also restricted or repetitive behaviors. But one common thing for children with autism is also they have a very hard and difficult time learning. In comparison to neurotypical children learn through playing. So they interact with the environment and they learn what happens. Now, children with autism typically don't do that. And there's one possible treatment, it's called applied behavior analysis, or ABA in short. And it teaches children how to react to situations and certain problems. Now, it is an umbrella term, so there is a whole variety of different methods that fall under this term. Originally, ABA was developed in the 1960s, and it is very well peer-reviewed and includes an antecedent, a behavior, and a consequence, but I'll dive a little bit into that later on. This work is mostly about discrete trial training, which is a rather strict setting for ABA, but you will see that in just a second as well. Now, there were some previous projects at Reykjavik University on the same topic. In 2017, a VR prototype was developed for special education teachers, where they would sit across a virtual student and teach them to distinguish those three little birds you can see in the picture down at the bottom. Now, this is also pretty much the same simulation setup, but it is a little bit rudimentary as it was in VR in 2017. In this case, later on in 2019, a behavior and attention model was added to the child where the main focus was interaction with a virtual human. In 2021, the prototype was then evaluated thoroughly, and they found that it was really working very well for teaching children how to implement this certain teaching method for children with autism. Now, in 2021, I started my master's thesis, so that's where this project came in. So the goal of my personal work were to develop a virtual reality trainer. Now you've just seen one, so we wanted to improve on that one by adding new interaction modalities, such as voiced input, and also virtual touch of the virtual human sitting in front of you. And also by resolving some known issues, such as a 2D paradigm for data entry, where in the original trainer, they just had an overlay, so we wanted to improve upon that as well. Further on, we wanted to also enhance the immersion by introducing augmented virtuality through physical objects. So basically building an augmented virtuality trainer. Now, in both versions, we did use the Unity game engine, as well as an Oculus Quest 2, and a AutoHand asset for environment interaction, which is a Unity plugin, so we could have an easier time implementing some of the environment interaction. For the augmented virtuality version, we also use the Oculus Quest hand tracking that ships with the Oculus Quest nowadays, and also a region-based Gaussian tracker, which is implemented in C++, which I will show later on as well, and also some OpenCV functions, for example, implementing an Uruko marker. But before we dive into that, just some short background on the simulation, what is actually happening here. So on the left side, you see a short diagram showing the actual simulation that would be implemented in real life. And on the right side, it is done as a sort of UML diagram, which is what we're doing in the virtual reality or augmented virtuality simulation. Basically, it always starts by looking at a data sheet, then presenting the objects to the child, then you prompt the child somehow or give it a cue, then you wait for the response of the child, and if the child is reacting, you reinforce the correct behavior. If it's not reacting, you help the child by guiding their hand to the correct prompt, or to the correct object in this case, and then you enter the data in the data sheet. And this is pretty much the same as you would do in real life. But now, why is this so important? It is very important to have this correct setup and also this very strict structure, so teachers will do it correctly in real life later on. Otherwise, they might teach the children something wrong or something goes wrong during their setup. So this just helps the teachers get comfortable in this environment and also get this in the correct order every time. So let's first start with the virtual reality trainer, where we want to improve upon the preceding projects. So our implementation goal was an immersive simulation for teachers. They sit across a virtual student and they have to implement 4 iterations of DTT, so this cycle that you've just seen. In the existing version, we had this overlay for data entry, and now we also wanted to improve upon that, as well as adding voice commands, where we use the Microsoft keyword recognition, which makes it very simple to just add simple commands or just a simple word. And we also wanted to have a touch and guide the virtual agent, so we had some virtual human direct interaction. Now, I have a short demonstration here So you can see we're sitting across the virtual child, and this is the datasheet that we have. So we take a look at that. It says here what we're actually doing. So we have a target, we have to put one object on the left, one object on the right, and the correct object, in this case the target, would be the bunny. So we put the owl to the left, the bunny to the right, and we would say here bunny. So don't know, yeah, it's muted so you can't hear it. And the child points correctly, so reinforce that behavior. Now we have the same setup but the opposite way around, and the child does not react, so we have to guide her hand to the correct objects later on, and then the child is correct, and we again reinforce it, in this case with the P, so it needed a prompt, and then we can do the rest of the iterations. And this case, the teachers could learn what they have to do and what is the correct order, when to guide the children's hand, and yeah. So now we did run a user-centered evaluation afterwards. The main goal was to get feedback from actual users and experts that are already using this teaching method in the field and that were learning or are learning this teaching method right now. So we had 2 sessions. First sessions was after a course on DTT at Reykjavik University, and a second session at a school where actually many of the instructors work that implement this DTT method. In total, we had 8 participants, as well as 1 instructor who participated in both studies. So we really could see that during those 2 sessions, we made some slight adjustments which really increased usability. Now, the results, as I just mentioned, all changes in comparison with the old trainer were highly appreciated, and especially the voice input and the virtual agent interaction, so where you guide the hand of the child, that has resonated very well with our participants. So all participants felt highly involved in the scene. I think it was 80% felt highly involved in the scene and 20% felt involved in the scene. But one issue they reported was the realness of interaction with the objects was mixed. So this bunny and the owl that were placed was kind of difficult for them to imagine that they were real. But overall, some open comments were the virtual experience that feels like science fiction, and it is overall a really cool program. And all 8 users would recommend the VR trainer, and 6 recommending it strongly. And this VR trainer is actually also going to be used at Reykjavik University for training upcoming teachers on DTT. Now, we want to improve upon that with the augmentation with real-world object. So I have one of those objects here with me. It's a 3D printed bunny. And we now want to implement virtual reality plus real-world objects to have an augmented virtuality trainer. Now, for augmented virtuality, you always need some sort of so-called 6D pose estimation. So you want to have an object that is tracked where you know, first of all, the translation, where it is, and also the rotation, in which direction it currently looks. There's a few different approaches for that. Often used, for example, if you use a VR headset, you have those controllers, which is hardware-based tracking. But those hardware-based trackers are often too bulky and too big, but they are very fast and accurate. But it's not really suitable for our objects. Then there are some learning-based approaches for 6D tracking, but they can often be slow and complex. They need training, they require a depth camera, or they require an object with some texture, but there's a lot of them. So there's probably one learning-based approach for every idea that you have, but we really wanted one tracking algorithm or one tracking option where we could use on those bunnies here or on those 3D printed object. So we wanted something that is very flexible and that does not need a depth camera, as it was COVID, so we did not have access to lab equipment. In the end, we ended up with a region-based tracking algorithm, which can run on 1 CPU core very fast, and it only looks at the shape of the objects. So it works really well with 3D printed objects, but it needs an initial pose, which I will come to later on as well. So now in the first environment, in the VR trainer, we have the computer running the VR environment, as well as the VR headset that was just looking at stuff. Now, for the pose estimation, we had a bit of a more complex setup, where we had the computer, as well as our tracking camera, in this case a webcam, which was tracking an Aruco marker as well as an object. And the VR headset was only connected to the computer, which then had the camera frames from the tracking camera and calculated the position of the tracked object relative to the Aruco marker. In the beginning of each training session, you would then have to put on your VR headset and point at corners of the Aruco marker. So the Aruco marker was basically our ground truth, and we knew where the Aruco marker is in relation to the VR headset, and we knew where the tracked object is in relation to the Aruco marker. So this way we could calculate where the tracked object is in relation to the VR headset. Later on, it turned out that this was not the best approach, but we'll come to that later on, as I just said. Now, the tracker that we used is a region-based Gaussian tracker, which was implemented by Stoiber, and it's implemented in C++. So this is very handy as we can integrate it in Unity as a native plugin with some additional functions, so we could run it from inside Unity. Now, it is an iterative algorithm, and it tracks the pose from frame to frame. So just a really, really short overview. You have an object, in this case, the red ape here at the bottom. And you can see the red ape moved slightly down and to the right, and you can still see the calculated contour of where the pose was in the frame before that. So the algorithm now calculates a histogram of the whole picture and tries to estimate the fore and the background. So tries to see where some fore and background element are. And the darker it is, the more it is in the foreground, and the whiter it is, the more it is in the background. So you can see in the picture 2, you have the very dark shape of the ape, and in the background, nothing, because it correctly estimated it as background. Now, along the shape of the object, the algorithm then draws those correspondence lines, which is basically vectors that point out of the shape, and then it estimates the new pose along with the calculated contour, and it shows that on the bottom right picture. So we ran a short technical evaluation with the tracking algorithm, and we investigated some jitter as well as accuracy from distance to marker, and also the time needed. So this were all things that would likely have an impact on the user experience. Now, we ran 4 testing scenarios with different realistic settings, with a baseline, a darkroom, similar background, and also a distance test. And overall, especially the baseline, was very accurate, with over 93% of data points being closer to 1 millimeter to the actual ground truth that we found out. There were more inaccuracies with the darkroom and the similar background, but if you run it on a example white desk with a red 3D printed object, you should have no problems, especially if the room is well lit. Now, we also ran a technical evaluation on the distance. So we positioned the object 20 centimeters away from the marker in a 90-degree angle, and we measured that it was just 20.01 millimeter off, but it had a slight rotation issue. And this multiplied to the headset as we calculated the object to the marker and the marker to the headset. This rotation issue actually doubled or quadrupled. Now, we also ran a short timing test with 2 objects and a Aruco marker, and overall it resulted in about 20 FPS for the tracking algorithm. So it's a very accurate algorithm. It was really suitable for that task. And yeah, it can easily be integrated, but it could also provide higher immersion in the end to the end user. But there were some buts. The objects printed for testing in Iceland were too small, and setting up the ground truth is difficult and can be inaccurate. And also finding the initial object pose is tricky because you have to align it with the tracking algorithm and then press play basically. So we could not run a user evaluation due to these problems, and this is also where we suggest some future work. So in augmented virtuality, a second algorithm is needed to find the initial pose, and the shared coordinate system has to be slightly better. For example, if you use the cameras of the Oculus Quest or another head-mounted display, and that would also resolve some of the startup issues. Finally, you also have to adapt the hand tracking slightly, as the plugin that we used off-put the hand tracking, and that also made it more difficult to interact with the real objects. In virtual reality, you could just add some more prompts and train an evaluation. mode, so you can try out if it actually really improves for the teachers. And you can also add some different scenarios, for example, a child that is not very consecrated. Overall, in conclusion, we developed a virtual reality simulation that teaches students how to conduct DTT very successfully. It allows for multimodal input and physical interaction with the virtual agent. Got very high acceptance by actual users, and it will be used in the future as well, which is very high success, I think. And we also laid the base for an augmented virtuality setup that includes camera calibration, is ready for usage with Unity, can handle multiple 3D printed objects very well and very fast. And it also suggests that augmented virtuality is absolutely a viable approach for small object scale simulations. And with that, just a short list of the sources that I used in this talk. And thank you very much, and have a nice week.
Okay, perfect. So do we have any questions regarding that topic?
So to clarify, it was 8 + 1 participants total. So what's, do we know what the breakdown is? Was it 4 novices and 4 experts, or?
Yeah, so this was a test in Iceland with the people there. So it was very difficult to generate, and there are not many trainers in Iceland in general because it's a small island. So it is a quite small number, but they have done a study previously before that, and Hannes will do more user studies in the future with this concept in mind.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to understand. So was the one person, the trainer, the one expert, and the rest were novices, or?
These were new teachers that are being trained for the use of autism, for autism children training, basically, and that's the reason why they were not fully trained trainers already. They are the ones that should come after.
Okay. And then, so I saw that there was a user-centered evaluation, but not any information about how that was done. And I get it. There's a lot of content. You can't cover everything. I was just wondering, did they do surveys? Were they just people self-reporting their experience? Did you use a scale?
So first of all, it was built on research, on a lot of other papers that people developed similar solutions. And also from the teachers themselves that Professor Hannes is in contact with. They were involved from the beginning to the end. They tested out various times in between the solution and giving us some insights into it. For example, how you design these tables, or which kind of objects you choose. This has all specific logics. Even the colors of these animals have specific logics behind them. And so it was only possible to develop like that with the help of these specific trainers.
Yeah, so was it like, I'm trying to figure out like the mechanism through which you got the information from the trainers. So was it semi-structured interviews? Were you asking them questions, or were they just giving you their thoughts as they experienced the event?
Yeah, it was semi-structured interviews.
Okay.
With test runs with us for the software.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No problem. Other questions? Okay, David, then I would say we can start.
You can introduce the third paper by David Butke about the beer game.
Okay, then we come from a simulation for our teachers to a simulation about beer, and it's a very famous
the one that's good. Yeah.
Okay, you already, David. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very famous work by G. Foresters, and I think everyone who studies like business or business informatics, also like me, has at least heard from that. But for those who haven't, it's a fun little project, and with that, I will give to David.
Okay, thank you very much, Christian, also for having us here. Thanks to David. So honor here to present today, and gotta apologize that it's not going to be AR at all. So it's going to be purely VR, and even it's not going to be very technical. I apologize for that as well, because we are at the Murnal and we are at the School of Management at the TUM, and so we look into applications, but they are innovative, at least that I can say. And that's something that we are presenting. It's still work in progress. I think it's going to make some impact, because it's in teaching supply chain management, the #1 application. It's Jake Forrest's beer game. It's a very nice thing to teach in general, and now we are presenting how we want to transform it, or how we are about to transform it into visual reality application. Christian is also co-op on that piece. He's been guiding us a lot through the process of getting it, let's say, more computer science ready. I will co-presenting with Muna. He is my PhD student. He's very much in the lead also on this project. We'll share the presentation. We thought it might be a bit more fun and more interactive to switch. So Muna, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you, David. And I would like to first start with actually a phenomena which is called bullwhip effect. And this is the phenomena for which the beer game was actually developed by Jay Forrester at MIT Sloan School of Management. And this phenomena, or demand amplification or bullwhip effect, as it's called, it's a very well experienced phenomena in the global economy, and especially during the COVID times, it came back into the picture and caught the attention for everyone, because the consumer demand spiked suddenly, and you see that the stores were left empty for the essential goods. So to explain, just maybe imagine a case of toilet paper for which the demand was fairly constant pre-COVID, and consumer, because of the panic buying behavior, they started buying more than they needed, and because of which the retailers has to place more orders from the wholesaler, and the wholesaler has to place even more order from the manufacturers, who had to place more order from their suppliers. And as you can see that it escalates the demand for a product for which the actual demand is relatively less. And the further this chain went, the demand got larger in an amplified form. And some of you may question that what is wrong in that? So the demand is more, you prepare more. The issue is that the amplification of demand, it disrupts the supply chain. You need to produce more, you need more storage capacity. And when the demand would be stable again in the future, which we hope we would be, then what would you do of that additional capacity? It is underutilized and you have lost the resources. So bullwhip effect, it's not a new phenomena. It's fairly well experienced, well researched in supply chain. And there are a lot of articles which are focusing on the causes, the effects, the remedies. For example, Crosso and Donoho, 2006, they explored the behavioral causes of bullwhip effect in their article in Management Science. And Lee et al., they focused on the information distortion aspect, which is actually the operational cause for causing the bullwhip effect. And Francois and Wouters, 2000, they focused on quantifying what is the magnification of bullwhip effect and how it can be measured. And Oya in 2007, for example, they provide a remedy such as how information sharing can affect in mitigating the effect of bullwhip. And although there are some remedial measures for reducing the bullwhip effect, it becomes extremely difficult to completely mitigate it because of the role that human behavior plays in causing bullwhip effect. And that is the reason that teaching bullwhip effect, it becomes extremely important for supply chain instructors and for various courses in supply chain. And there are different ways of teaching bullwhip effect. For example, Boot and Lambrecht 2009, they explored how spreadsheet simulations, Excel and everything can be used for teaching. Taylor 1999, they focused on case studies, and they took a case of UK-based automotive supplier for how to examine the bullwhip effect. But in general, we saw that beer game was one of the best aspect of teaching the bullwhip effect. And teaching can be better explained by my supervisor, actually.
I don't know about that, but let me give it a try. So you see, the bullwhip effect is super important, and it used to be super important 50 years ago. We still haven't gotten rid of it, even though there's a lot of research. And the question is, are we good in teaching it? I would say it depends. And the way we teach it, there are various ways. And I think still one way we like to teach is that we go from theory first, right? That we say, what's the theory? And there are some nice formulas. That's just one of them. We can explain it to our students where, you know, D is a demand random variable, and we get some costs associated with it, and we get some dynamics, and those formulas, they capture it incredibly well, what's going on in the reality. But it turns out not everyone likes it, to learn it the way very mathematically driven. And so a more intuitive approach is often needed also to get the messages across. That sometimes the bachelor students who might not get the math in that depth, but also when you teach executives or professionals, it's often a challenge, and the more, you know, a more applied version is often much more effective in teaching it. And so the beer game has been developed over 50 years ago. Maybe you can explain a bit how the supply chain looks like in a beer game.
Yeah. So the beer game has, now we come to the game aspect or the simulation aspect of the game, and it has 4 players, which is factory or brewery, you can call it distributor, wholesaler, and retailer. And these players form one supply chain, and each one has a role of an entity. So the way it works is each player holds some inventory. You can call it a beer, which they can sell to the next downstream supply chain player. And in each cycle, the customer makes some random orders of beer from the retailer, and the retailer then sees this in-house inventory, and then they places an order to the wholesaler. The wholesaler places an order to a distributor. The distributor places an order to the factory, and that is how the beer game actually works. So what happens more in one cycle is that factory delivers from his in-house inventory to the distributor. The distributor delivers to the wholesaler, and the wholesaler delivers to the retailer, and retailer delivers to the customer. What is interesting about the game is that the information is flowed with a 1 week delay or 1 cycle delay, if you can call it, and the product flows with 2 weeks delay. It means that the information about the current demand, it will be going to the retailer in the next week, from retailer to wholesaler in the next week. And same, the product which you have ordered in this current week, it would be delivered in the next 2 weeks. So the players have to make certain assumptions about, okay, what would be the future demand be? What would be what would be the next downstream supply chain player would be demanding for in the next round, so that they have to make certain assumptions based on their in-house inventory and then place the order accordingly. And each player has this individual goal to minimize their own cost. And how do you minimize the cost? You have to make sure that you have just enough inventory, not too less or not too more. Because if you have high inventory, then you have piled up a lot of inventory, which is additional cost. And if you cannot fulfill the demand, that is also not good, because then you get the penalty cost. So this game basically sums up a simple supply chain. And what is interesting here is that even though the structure of the game is relatively simple, it actually captures the industry aspects. And the decision taken by one player, it affects the decision of the another player. And what is more important here is to note that the players cannot communicate with each other. So the only way to pass on their decision is to pass on through the orders, which you can see here. And they cannot retailer directly cannot contact the distributor.
And so you see, the reality is already pretty complex, right? So we got various firms and they make decisions, but in the end, in this simulation, we try to keep it as simple as possible, but you've seen the way that Murat has described it, which I think was very much to the point. It's not quite easy for students to remember all the steps. And when we play it in the classroom, this is what it looks like. One deck that I once created here, where we have those people, 4 people, they are supply chain, they take on the roles of those various firms from retailer to the factory. And you can see it's pretty big already, the setup. So the sheets on the bottom, they are about A4. It's pretty big. It fills an entire line in a classroom. And you see there are the order slips. That's highlighted in green now, where you put on the order in week 1, that's what comes from the customer, and you communicate this way, just the order that you place. You got the tokens in your inventory, which you always have to count, and you got to take notes and make a lot of record keeping so that we would know what's going on here. In the end, the only decision that students make is how many items to order. But a lot of dynamics are going on, like the shipment of information flow, the flow of goods, everything has to be managed, bookkeeping, everything that happens in real form. And you see, what it comes down is we want to teach people, if you make decision A, what are the consequences here? This is the bullwhip effect. This is why it happened, and this is why it always will happen. And let's think about what we can do against it. But when you break it down, you have to teach them a lot of dynamics of how that game works. And that's why very often when we play it in the classroom, 40 rounds of that game take about 180 minutes, which is quite time consuming and a lot of overhead. And so there's no wonder that more interactive versions have been developed already.
Yeah, and one interactive version that we developed is the online version from Professor Woodker, and then it overcomes the drawback of board game that you don't require a lot of time in setting up, and you can do quick calculations. And what is great about this version is students just need to make a decision about how many units to order, and they have all relevant information on hand just when they need it. So they don't have to do a lot of calculation, bookkeeping, and we develop this in multiplayer format by transferring the decisions of each player to a server and then storing them in a MySQL database and then downloading all the information within a supply chain layer by each round. So it reduces a lot of time for the students, and we can quickly understand what is going on.
And it's cool. So this is kind of the output that you generate automatically. This is with JChart created charts, and you can see what's going on, and you can particularly use it for the debrief. And so you see here are the orders that are placed by the different firms, and you can see it across the weeks. We always play 40 rounds. And you can see, for instance, here in 1 week, the factory placed an order of 70, which is a lot. If you think about it, the customer had a real demand of 8. And you see, actually, the customer demand was 4, and then it went up to 8 until the end. But you see a lot of fluctuation is going on. And this kind of visualization is key for teaching students. And this is the data we need to generate in this game. Now, when we play it in the classroom, that often looks like this. But one of the drawbacks of the online version is that people lose the sense of seriousness of what it represents, right? The representativeness suffers. What happens is people sometimes just place incredible orders, because if you order 4, 40, or 400, it's just 1 0 more. If you have it in the classroom in front of you, counting to 400 is crazy, and they notice something goes wrong. If they place orders of 400, I ask people, why did you do it? Well, I felt the demand was like that, right? And so we felt that the one key issue of a simple online version on a 2D web-based version is people just add some numbers and they don't have any sense to it anymore. All the context gets lost. And that's when we started to decide to develop a VR version.
So the VR version, actually, it overcomes the illustrative nature of the web version, which is not available in the 2D web version, and it brings the best of online and the board version. So the main aim of this project is to bridge the gap between strong illustrative power that the board game offers and easy and quick access to the online VR game version, so that the VR game can be taught in a more meaningful sense. So we started with WebXR. It's a quite robust API. It supports almost all of the devices, and it runs on a server, so you don't have to download local app. And then if you just update the WebXR version online, and then all of the devices would be automatically getting the updates. So we tested with the WebXR version first, but we noticed several delays because a lot of data has to be downloaded from the server to individual devices. And the first attempt it took about 10 to 20 seconds of delay for each cycle. However, when we ran it in class, in some parallel supply chains for 5 to 6 supply chains, it failed because the delays got aggravated. For each cycle, students it need to download at least 50 MB of data, and that took a lot of issues. Whereas there were a lot more limited opportunities offered by WebXR because of the limited interaction with the devices, or it cannot be used for creating very highly interactive rich scenes. And therefore, we decided to discontinue this development of VR game in WebXR in 2021, and we switched to Unity. Unity offers good quality of high quality graphics, and it provides a framework for the 3D VR versions, which make it easier for us to create visually appealing devices. As you can see here, the game begins by a screen where the student has to enter the user ID, which is pre-assigned to them. And upon entering the lobby, it checks the user ID, and then the student is redirected to the role. It resolves the primary issue with large file transfer, because all the information is stored actually on the device in the APK format. And you just need to transfer a small amount of data, textual data, which is about the user ID or the number of products to order. So it resolves that issue with the large file update. And the participants play the beer game for 40 rounds. Database collects all the information on a PHP server, and then it is provided to another players. It analyzes the data and provides to another players. And here, what is great is it offers the visualization aspects. So for example, if you can see here, the students can see, oh, my inventory is low, or my inventory is very overcrowded. So they can sense what is going on in their warehouse, and they can make a more meaningful or sensible decision to place the order. So as David mentioned, the application is still work in progress, but we have tested its ability on the Pico Neo 2 devices and communicated with MySQL version. The current version works as a standalone application, and we believe that it will resolve the issue with the illustrative aspect and visualization aspect, and expect students to make more realistic decisions. So what's the road ahead for us is we want to integrate, we will be integrating the VR version with the web version, so that students can have multi-platform beer game application, which is accessible to all the students. And after integration, we will test the both web and VR version. And next, firstly, we'll start with a small scale test with 2-3 in parallel, and then with the full-fledged classroom. And we expect to run it to teach students in classroom, particularly interested in analyzing whether the decision made by VR game, if it is consistent with those in the board versions, where students were making a decision of 200 to 300, which is still a sensible, rather than the web version, where they were making a decision to order 10,000 units per week. So we'll seek to compare if the task fulfillment time for the web and VR version, and examine if the usability of VR can be is fruitful in the beer game version aspects. So that was from our side, and
yes,
I would like to.
Yeah. So thank you also from my end. To add, now you might wonder, okay, is that really working already? Now we are still testing. And at the moment, there are some conjectures in there, such as it will make things much better using VR. I think it's going to be very exciting to test it with our students to see how they react, and whether this will also be a more memorizable experience, that in 5 years, they might even still say, well, that was cool. I remember the bullwhip effect, because whether they just say, yeah, there was this online experience, I just clicked some numbers and I don't know anymore, but it was fun. So let's see. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, then maybe later. David, I would say.
Then we can proceed with our last talk about the 4th paper. It's a project from the University of Hamburg, and it's called Heated Escape, a virtual reality serious game on the urgency of climate crisis. So, Lina, I think you will present. So yeah, you can share the slides.
Let's quickly see if that works how I planned. Okay, and can you see the slides?
We can see you and we can hear you, but I cannot see your slides. Now I can see your slides.
Perfect. Okay, so my name's Lina, and I'll today talk about our work in progress paper, Heated Escape, a virtual reality serious game on the urgency of the climate crisis. we worked on this project during a course in our master's. We are all from the University of Hamburg, from the Department of HCI. Two of my co-authors are actually here with me at the moment. And we were supported by a fourth member, as well as our supervisor, Dr. Fariba Mustayeran, and our head of chair, Professor Dr. Frank Steinicke, who also are co-authors on the paper we submitted. I'll just quickly go over what I'll be covering here today. First, I wanted to talk a bit about our idea, what we had in mind, what we actually implemented, what is our game design, our design decisions, and then have a quick discussion about what we've achieved so far and hope to achieve in future works. In the course we did, the topic was on serious games. So we learned about serious game having the purpose of influencing thoughts and actions in real life contexts. So we thought about where an application might be very useful. So we decided on the climate change, which is a topic regarded as one of the most important topics, well, in our generation. So yeah, here we go. So we looked at how we would like to implement that. So there are actually a few related works on this. So there are some serious games on sustainability that actually showed great results. In fact, they showed that environmental beliefs and attitudes towards climate change could be changed through serious games. And one of the main inspirations for our work was escape room called Unlock the Future. It was developed again as a way to change players' environmental beliefs and attitudes. And for those of you who don't know what an escape room is, you have to solve puzzles to escape a room. So there are some environmentally themed puzzles, and by that and by having this active learning environment, you can solve it and hopefully then change your beliefs as well. So with that as an inspiration, we included the main aspect of our studies, which was the virtual reality aspect. So we implemented a virtual reality escape room using direct interaction and doing an immersive multimodal experience. The advantages of having VR instead of a just normal escape room are one, that we are very much independent of location. So people can use this escape room everywhere in the world in limited space. You don't need the hardware, the equipment that most analog real-life escape rooms need. As well, we have the immersive surroundings. So we can directly interact with the objects in the 3D space while simulating effects you can't simulate in the real world. For example, drastically changing outside environment, which I will talk about a little bit later. So we developed an escape room called Heated Escape, running out of time, with the goals to educate about the urgency and teach about sustainable behavior, as it was found that one of the main ways to combat the climate crisis is actually about education and just teaching people ways to change the current situation. So what did we do? First of all, the game setting. The game is set in a near future environment. So we still kept it realistic looking. It looks similar to a modern loft, we would say. but the story is an end of the world scenario. So when you start the escape room, you get the story via broadcast, which is basically the world is ending and the place you're currently in will get uninhabitable in the next, in our case, 15 minutes. So we have this plausible event and the player has to get themselves to safety before the timer runs out. We chose this big room to have lots of room for exploration. And also you can see those big windows on the left to see the outdoor environment, which is one of the more interesting parts in our game, because we have the changing outdoor environment. So to stay consistent with our story, which is the hostile environment and the uninhabitability of the planet, we start out with this very friendly environment. We have a blue sky, we have lots of trees, and as the game keeps going, the trees vanish, the sky gets darker, very hostile looking. We have pollution starting. So one of our goals was not only to educate about sustainable behavior, but also to convey this feeling of pressure. And that's why this VR application is so great, because the participants, the players, are in there by themselves in this urgent environment. They hopefully feel this like counting down of the timer. They see this change outside. So we really want to create the sense of pressure and urgency inside of the players. The main game mechanic involves solving puzzles. We currently have 2.5 puzzles implemented, and they can be solved independently of each other. So the player is very free in his or her choices. So I'll quickly go over them. We first have the trash sorting puzzle. You can see a quick video here of what the player is doing. So you are in the kitchen area, you go there and collect trash, and you have to put it in the according bins. You can see here, these are the German bin systems we use to recycle here. So we have, for example, green for biological waste. You see here the player gets feedback. So if they put something wrong in, so for example, this banana doesn't belong into the trash as it's still good, it would allow it. So we have this education aspect as well, where they get feedback about the actions and then learn about what is the correct way to do it. By having this repeated action, we hope to have habit formation as a result. It's a really simple mechanic. So by doing it often, the player will hopefully improve and build these habits also for the real world. Once the puzzle is solved, those question marks you saw in another frame, maybe when we turn around here, yeah, that they will get solved again, and there will be a code appearing, which I'll talk about in a second. The second puzzle we implemented was on a little bit different topic with a different twist. So we wanted to shock people there by having them place pictures of uninhabitable places by 2050 on there. 2050 is probably a time we will hopefully all get to see. So we really want to shock the players in the, well, not possibility, but the likelihood that these places will not be habitable in 25 years or so. Another aspect was that while the other player had a really simple mechanic, you would have to use logic and think actively about this problem. You have here on the left lamps indicating success or unsuccess. I won't go into the details of this, but you would basically have to explore the room and then find all the pictures you need and put them in the correct order. I can show you now how this would look if it's finished. So for example, we have here the Great Barrier Reef or Bangkok or Venedig, which are all places that are prone to be uninhabitable by 2050. Once you solve that puzzle, you get the second piece of code, which is needed to get out of the room and escape. So this seems to be a very long 8-digit code, but maybe the players will figure it out. Otherwise, it will get explained into the end. It's actually supposed to be a date. It's the 22nd of July, 2029. You might ask yourself, why is that a significant date? It was a date we calculated using the, there is this CO2 clock of the Mercator Research Institute on Global Commons and Climate Change, the MCC in Berlin, which calculates how much is our remaining CO2 budget to limit our global warming to 1.5 degrees. So once you escape the room, you get this second counter basically, and this meta message about us being in an escape room with the possibility of the world ending or like the Earth becoming uninhabitable. So we hope to leave the players with this leaving message of, okay, now you've solved this escape room, now go out there, take action and actually apply what you have learned or the attitudes you have about this game. So in, well, the discussion, what did we achieve? We built a VR escape room, which is immersive, it's interactive, and it works on a multimodal level. As it's still a work in progress paper, and this is the prototype, we thought a lot about what we still would like to add in future works, so it becomes a sustainable and good game, which can be used in a lot of different contexts. So we would like to add more puzzles, one to adjust the difficulty, but also just to make the game more interesting. We then would also like to include the idea of rewards to have a more positive perspective. So if you do climate conscious behavior, for example, turning off the lights or running water off, you would get extra time, as this would help well, slow down the climate crisis. Another aspect, which is also one of the well, main advantages of using VR, is that if we could put in the randomization of puzzles and content, that would add to replayability. Right now, an escape room is built like this. Once you've solved it, it really doesn't become that interesting anymore. But by having the, well, possibilities of VR and computer, we can actually randomize puzzles so the game becomes replayable and the knowledge gets retained maybe for a longer period, or they can just repeat stuff they didn't get the first time. Another thing is that we would really like to confirm our theories and hypotheses, as it's still, yeah, as said before, prototype. We would hope to do a study, also to rule out potential limitations we talked about in our developing process. So one thing is we would like to measure the game flow. Is this actually a game that is fun, as it's not used for like training purposes or in a business context. It's really important that this game is fun and people keep playing it. The second thing is that we actually want to see, is there a change in environmental attitudes? So just like in the real life escape room we looked at in our related works, can we achieve a change in environmental attitudes? Then another important aspect is there a knowledge gain? So while the change in environmental attitudes is a very interesting factor, we also hope that we can have them keep their knowledge for short as well as long-term time, as we have these repetitive tasks as well as this active learning environment. And lastly, we're hoping to look one of the potential limitations, which is the influence of this very dark theme versus a little bit of positive spin, especially with our ending, with the world being a real life escape room we have to escape from. We hope to not demotivate the players, but rather motivate them to take action and step forward. But that would also be a point we'd have to look at in our study. In conclusion, heated escape enables users to interact and explore, while it also enables them to gain more knowledge, while being a fun game with a serious twist. For our part, we had a lot of fun developing the game, and those who tried it did as well, but we are very much looking forward to the future of this work. Here, just the citations I used in the presentations. For all the sources, feel free to check out our paper. And now, thank you for listening. It has been a really great opportunity submitting this paper here and doing the whole process in this workshop. And we're just very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for a very interesting presentation. Do we have any questions on that?
I don't have a question, but you're talking about doing future work, so I figure I'll throw it out there. It'd be really interesting to see if, because you're talking about looking at pre-post environmental attitude, and then like short-term versus long-term intelligence gains, like about this arena. It'd be interesting to see if you've actually elicited behavioral change as a result of your work. So if you're going to follow up long-term and say, hey, you know, do you still remember that thing we told you? You could also say, have you changed anything? Do you recycle more? Do you walk more? Something like that.
That's actually a very interesting point. I don't think we have thought about that much, but that's, I mean, that's what we hope to achieve long term.
Absolutely. That's like the gold
Yeah.
standard, right? Of these kinds of like awareness games in this space. It's like, yes, you want people to change their attitudes, but if you can really get them over the precipice of changing their behavior, you have won. So just something worth looking at.
Yeah, great. Thanks. That's really, we'll keep that in mind.
Very cool work.
Yeah, for serious games, you have always these two possibilities: transferring knowledge at the first point, and the second, to change the user's behavior. But it's very difficult to track these changes, and yeah, it's also very difficult to do these long-term studies. Yeah. But in this case, I think it's very interesting. So probably you should think about if you can do long-term studies to track if your game is working and if your players are changing their behavior. Do we have more questions? If not, then we will come to the last part of our workshop. Christian has prepared a Miro board, so we can simply bring our thoughts together. And yeah, and for that, I hand over to him.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, last part, we created a Miro board, so basically an open end for the workshop, where you can go and have a look again at some topics. I will share my screen and show it very shortly. Do you see that?
Yes.
So these are the topics we have talked about from the Venus paper, but here's also open space, like some sticky notes. If you have some ideas, if you want to do some networking with other people, if you have new projects that came up and other stuff, feel free to post some stuff here. The room is still open. I think we can have it open for a little bit more time. And if you have other questions for the previously shown projects, either by David or me or from the speakers, they're also still here. So feel free to ask us.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Because I think Cassidy, you started this, right? This VR versus AR question. I would be interested in, do you believe that there is a thing such as only VR or only AR in the future? Or will it be inevitably maybe a bit more VR than AR or more AR than VR, but always some component of both, such that when they would say, yeah, in the beginning we distinguish, but eventually it's anyways hybrid, it's MR or XR, or call it the metaverse one day. It goes to everyone who's more knowledge than I do, and that's every one of you.
Yeah, so I think there will be, especially from a technological standpoint of view, more mixed reality in the future. So with the meta, we see this already, that AR and VR are getting more and more put together. And I think that's not such a bad thing, because then you have much more out of one headset. And there are totally new possibilities by melting real objects, real environments with virtual objects or with virtual environments. And I think that's going to be a part of the future. What are other people thinking here in the room?
I think David's trying to start a fight about people fighting for the value of their technology. No, I think, again, I'm still a student, so I have a lot to learn, but I think we're going to see a lot more AR than VR. And I think that's because AR has all these practical implications, right? Like, companies are really invested in like trying to be at the cutting edge, and I think it's like we see a lot of that with Facebook and stuff like that with VR, because VR is the more currently packageable thing. But I think as AR becomes more commercializable to the general public, we'll see more of that, particularly as augmented reality includes video pass-through, which some people would define as like mixed reality or as VR, but it's by Milgram's definition, it's augmented reality. So I think we'll see a lot more AR than VR, but I don't think VR is going anywhere. I think it still has a place as well. Said from someone who does AR research and has a bias that I must share. So
No problem. I would just say it depends on the topic. So if you are using virtual objects inside the museum, for example, if you are at the location, then AR is better than VR because you are already there, and then you can use only some small objects and small additions. If you are not at the museum, if you are at home, for sure, then VR could be the best choice. But you can also augment the exhibits on your table or into your room. It's also possible. But I think in this case, VR would be the better choice. So yeah, it depends.
But so I mean, I see that point, right? But the question is, will we eventually see pure VR? Will this pure VR exist? Because if I think about the research that Christian and you presented, it always seems to me like there's such a big need for having at least a bit of the reality included, right? That no one really wants to be entirely away, because then we feel like, oh, where am I? And people get nervous and stuff like that. So can there be this absolute extreme of VR in the future? Like some think about the metaverse, or is that something completely against the nature of us humans, that we really don't want that?
That's a really philosophical question. Yeah, the metaverse, there's lots of fun comics and depictions of it when we all live just in the metaverse. Yeah, I think it's going to be a problem, right? And yeah, we will see most likely if some concept like this will survive, or if it's just too much for us to handle on the long term. With health issues certainly going to be an issue happening.
Thank you.
just check the board. So you're still invited to use some sticky notes and leave some comments. For sure, have a look at all the papers. I think all of you got the link to get the e-publications for this conference. And you will also find the papers, I think, in the next weeks in IEEE Explore. Yeah, for sure we have our website with all the links. So if you want to get in touch with us or the other authors, so please write an email. And yeah, for sure you also can leave some comments here in the board. Probably we'll find some new ideas, new ways. We can also open in the communication section a part about AR versus VR or XR. It's also the possibility to say, okay, it's all the same. It's all here in XR. So yeah, please use all these different communication ways so we can share ideas, probably work together in the future and get yeah, better serious VR applications, simulations, or games.
Yeah, I do actually have a couple questions for both of our organizers here that are different. My first question is a lot of your work funded? And if so, where are you finding these funding mechanisms? And my second question is, what other spaces are you finding homes for your work? Like there's this conference workshop here, but are there other journals that you're applying to? Like where can I find more work like this?
Yeah, I think Christian will talk about the projects that are funded. In my case, all the things I showed you are not funded. I have a teaching position and I've also a lectureship at the LMU. The other one here in Munich. And so I bring together the computer scientists with people from the archaeology, Egyptology, or history department. And so we make use of AR and also VR and serious games. And yeah, there we can try out if we are capable of transferring the knowledge to the people. The second question about where do we publish all our stuff? Yeah, for sure, we're using the VR, we are using the ISMAR conference. Then we are using different journals. There are some special issues that are popping up. We have used a special issue from the Frontiers journal. We have also used the MDPI, the Heritage Journal. We have the journal on I think it's Joch journal on computers and cultural heritage. Yeah, that's the acronym. And yeah, there are a lot of special issues about mixed reality or AR, VR in combination with serious games. And in case of the Heritage Journal, for sure, it's focused on cultural heritage.
Okay, cool.
Christian,
Thank you.
do you have something to add?
Yes. So for example, we already published something in Frontiers. It's a quite large open access journal. MDPE is also quite famous. And other than that, HCII, that's the Human Computer Interaction International Conference, that we published some stuff about older adults, some of the projects that we made with touchscreens, and also bring like physical, tangible, conductive pieces for serious games that you put on the touchscreen. We made such publications there and some of the user studies. Other than that, funding, there are multiple options like project proposals for a European project that is Europe-wide. It's larger, it's consortium oriented for maybe 10, 15 or more groups that join. But we also have smaller stuff like BMBF projects. These are like German state-funded projects. Going in the direction for healthcare, for example, the Enable project that you've seen some of the slides for is such a project. We have now a new project that targets robotics and augmented reality and virtual reality. It's going to be quite a fun project with lots of technologies involved and some startups. So this is possible if you want to collaborate with, let's say, startups or companies. Other than that, there are grants, personal grants that you can get from even companies like Facebook. That's also an option. Yeah, I think you have to look around quite a lot for specific topics. What we also had, maybe the last thing, we had international collaborations, for example, with Japan. There was some funding at the university for building up international connections. Also, that is possible.
Okay, thank you.
Just let me add to conference. I forgot there's the Kai Play conference.
Yeah, awesome.
There you can submit your serious games independent of AR, VR, something like that, just serious games. And also the serious game conference Gala, so Game Alliance. They also accept serious games with mixed reality. And both of these conferences have workshops, work in progress papers, where you can submit your ideas and prototypes. And for sure, you can submit short and long papers.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Some of these I've never heard of before, so I really appreciate it.
I can simply copy and paste the links to this conference. Just give me a second.
Okay. Well, very cool workshop. Very excited to see it here. Very cool papers, everybody. I think I might be the only person here who didn't have a paper, but very cool work. I really appreciated watching it and you all answering my questions. Thank you.
No problem.
Also from my side, thank you very much. It was a very nice session. A lot to learn. That's really cool. Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Yep. Thanks. See you.
Thank you for the
Probably
links.
another thing, Christian, we got the invitation to host a special issue by Frontiers, so probably, yeah, we will send you the link if this thing is started.
Oh, please
But
do, because I have a paper that I'm working on potentially sending to Frontiers. So if there's going to be a special issue, I would absolutely submit
but I
it.
think it will start in spring, something like that. We are just discussing this opportunity, and we are just collecting these group of reviews and so on. But yeah, it will be a special issue on serious games with mixed reality.
So you mean starting in spring, like you'll start accepting papers for review in spring, or it will come out in spring?
I think the call for papers will start in spring, and then you have normally 6 months to submit your paper or your journal. But you can submit it for sure earlier, and then the review process will start earlier now. So it could be published after, I think, 5 to 6 weeks, if it is a quick review process.
Okay.
Depends on if you have a minor or major revision.
Yeah. So is it possible that if you submit sooner to Frontiers, they'll flag it and say, hey, we're going to do a special issue on this? Hold on a minute.
I think that's not possible. I think you can start after the call is on the website of Frontiers.
Okay, cool. Well,
but you
I guess
can simply write us an email, and then we can send you the information when it is published or when it is on the website. The call.
I'm going to send you an email. Thank you. This is really good news.
Okay, yeah, then thanks to all the presenters. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for the interest and the questions. We are looking forward to hear from you. Please write us an email with all the things you're doing or planning, and probably we will get some papers from you to our special issues, or we will meet again next year, probably in Shanghai or online. We will see when we do the second version of the ARIS workshop, or yeah, probably at ISMAR next year. I don't know where it will be, but it's also the possibility that we will do there another workshop in with Series VR. So thank you guys, and we are looking forward to meet again. Bye.
Nice meeting you.
See you.
Thank you for having
Bye.
us.
Thank you. It was really interesting. Bye-bye.
Okay, so we are finished. We can close the room.
Yep.